Would like to call to order the May 3rd, 2021 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see everyone here in person with the exception of Commissioner Shue, and he is joining us virtually on Teams. So we're all present. First up is the approval of the work session agenda, which you all have a copy. Before you, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda with the changes on page 3?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we go to discussion items. For action. First up is our appointments to boards and committees. You all have that in your agenda and I think have previously received an email. All of the appointments do come along with recommendations from the various boards. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or discussion on those? Okay, if not, we will move to item 3.2, which is Boys and Girls Club of Cabarrus County funding request. And I've got down Valerie Melton, and perhaps she is with us virtually. We see
Hi,
Valerie.
can you hear me? Thank you.
Go ahead, the show is yours.
The show is mine. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to ask you guys for some additional support. This past year has been a very challenging year for the club, but not anything compared to the challenges that the families and children we serve have met. Since schools closed and the pandemic first began, we closed our club, and initially we opened doing virtual programming and meal distribution. And during this time, we were able to serve a number of children, probably approaching close to 600 children over the past year. We still have a very big job ahead of us as well. When school started, we opened ourselves as a virtual learning site and became open all day, every day from 7:15 to 6 o'clock, Monday through Friday. And we turned our existing rooms and our expansion into classrooms, and through some furnishings that we were able to get from the school system, we turned game rooms into classrooms with desks. So we spent that time working with children that were not able to be able to access the virtual learning that they needed to at home here at the club. And we've averaged close to 200 children at the club on a daily basis, and we're providing them with lunch and snack during the day, and then sending them home with a meal in the afternoon, and also sending weekend meals home with them. As schools began to start back on modified schedules, we continued to remain open all day for the children on the days they weren't at school, and on the days that they were here, they could stay full day. And the days when they were in school, we would transport them from the school to the club. We partnered with the school system in doing this so that we could serve all the kids that we needed to. This has been a challenge for us financially, and thank goodness for previous COVID funding we've received through the county and other sources. We've been able to maintain what we're doing. In addition, during this time, we stopped charging fees. Obviously, at a time like this, even though a lot of our kids already attended at no cost or at greatly reduced cost, we felt like it was important that we erase that burden from all the families. We've lost a great deal of money in the prior year in terms of program fees collected and of course in fundraising revenues, and we've been trying to manage that and keep that moving forward. As we approach the summer program, usually we would bring in like a couple $100,000 probably in fees associated with that, and we've been able to get some other program revenues in, but we're going to fall short for the summer. We've already registered over 400 children. We're going to continue, of course, for the summer to be open all day to provide breakfast, lunch, send them home with dinner, continue with meals in the evening. offer them all the different activities they have, but also address the huge issues with summer learning loss by having tutoring available for the kids. And we're in the process of talking with the schools so we can accommodate some of the summer school programs and transport children back and forth. We think that this summer is probably as critical as any summer that we've seen in the past, much more so. And as we look towards being able to fund this, we're going to come short. We're going to do it no matter what, but it would sure be nice to be able to see that we had some more support from the county. And we're of course looking at other sources to help us overcome this so that we're not starting from a deficit when the school year begins.
Great. Thank you very much, Valerie. Commissioners, do you have questions for Valerie before we ask some questions of staff regarding our ability to do this?
I have just one quick question. Valerie, how do your costs for this summer compare to a normal summer run?
So it'll probably be very comparable. Even though we have more children in an average summer than what we're able, because we're going to maintain a lot of the COVID precautions this summer as well with social distancing and smaller groups, but we have just as many rooms, and so and just as many groups, just smaller groups. So therefore it requires us to have just about equal staff as we've had in the past. Now, some of the supplies could be less, but of course with COVID and with cleaning, all of those supplies increase. We are wanting to operate Camp Spencer this summer. We will probably do a shorter day and smaller groups, but every group will be able to spend a week at Camp Spencer. And we think that that's so important to get these kids back to some fun and to what they've seen in the past. So it's hard to develop budgets in this new COVID era, but we're staffing as we would for a standard program. You also have to keep in mind, we opened the new facility right in the middle of COVID. So we have almost twice as much space that we're covering now. And thank goodness, because it's allowing us to accommodate so many more children, still keeping them social distanced.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Valerie?
No, I think she made a comment that, I mean, we all know is coming, and that's that this summer might be the most critical summer that we can possibly imagine as far as trying to take the children. Last year had, a month that kind of got thrown out of kilter. Well, this year, the entire school year has been out of kilter. So I know the school system's going to be grappling with summer school and schedules and trying to make sure that everybody, gets the learning that they're supposed to get, and that they don't just push them along just to push them along and get them out of the way. That would be the worst thing that could happen. So, I mean, doing something like this, hopefully we're getting ready to hear, as Chairman Moore said, that that we have the ability and the means to do something, but it certainly is headed in the right direction if we can help you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment as well. I know that Cabarrus County, between the schools and then helping with the Boys and Girls Clubs and all the different things that we do for the citizens of Cabarrus County, our children are probably the most valuable asset that we have. And I'm just glad that we have a place like the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm glad we got someone like Valerie to, take on all those challenges there, especially during the problems that we've had for the last 12 or 14 months. So my hat's off to you, Valerie. Thank you so much for you and your staff for helping the citizens of Cabarrus County to help somehow get these kids back to some type of a normalcy. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my staff. I'd love to take credit, but I work with an amazing group of people. I just get to be the face, but they do all the work.
Thank you both. I'll turn to the county manager if you have some information to us regarding our ability. I know that there are some COVID funds that we have hopefully some flexibility with.
Yep, I just confirmed with Rodney, we do currently have in excess of $500,000 left in that fund that are available for this purpose.
Okay, so I guess And of course, I did not hear a specific dollar request.
Oh.
So,
Chairman, what is this,
150.
150,
150,000.
okay,
Yeah, sorry about
okay.
that.
I said 150, but if you've got 500.
No,
you know.
you're not the only one
You
talking
need to
tonight.
know. Let me know.
Yeah, Valerie, we have others that are asking as
I
well.
know, I know.
But we don't begrudge you for asking, because that was the smart thing
Just had
to
to
do.
tell my board I tried.
absolutely. Okay, well, it sounds like we are, if it is the board's pleasure, we're able to put this on our regular agenda for action at our meeting in 2 weeks. Now, I think we have consensus on that. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all you guys do for us here.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 3.3, funding to begin the MIT mentoring program at the Cabarrus Center. And I think we have Barbie Jones, Paige Castrodale, and Peter from Flywheel joining us to talk about that. And I can't see on the
They're in
screen
the
which,
hall.
oh, they're in the hall.
yeah,
They
they're-
just don't know to come in.
Yeah.
We are following social distancing requirements and bringing folks in several at a time as well. And you guys are up, and we've only provided one chair for you. Now you have two. Is
Yeah,
Paige with
I
you?
believe Paige. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome. We're glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, pleasure to be here.
And the floor is yours.
Okay, very good. We sent over some slides. I don't know if those are queued up for
Lauren
sharing.
is,
She
yeah,
needs to be 3 people right now.
yeah.
They're not absolutely necessary.
Oh, he's going to try.
Okay, all right, very good. So while he's queuing that up, I want to say good afternoon to everyone. And Chairman Morris, thank you for allowing us to come before the commissioners. Commissioners, good to see you. So Barbie, do you want to kind of tee this up and then I'll give the details?
Sure, absolutely. So you're all very familiar with the Cabarrus Center concept and the fact that we opened earlier this year. I should say we're Chamber's relocating there. I'm being very optimistic in December. But it is a shared space for community partners to come together to be able to move our businesses forward of all sizes, whether they're startups, existing businesses, scalable, small, large. There's something for everyone there, and all of us are co-locating and sharing our services and resources. One of the programs that we see that we are needing is the mentorship program, something that we could take all businesses of all sizes, be able to work with them, team them with teams, and that Peter will get more into the MIT program shortly, but it's very different from a lot of other mentorship programs. In fact, we would be working with our existing partners to be able to pull together just the best of the best in mentoring. That could work with all of our businesses on an ongoing basis to be able to strengthen them and grow them. But I'll let Peter talk a little bit more about the ins and outs of the program.
So again, great to be here. My name is Peter Marsh. I'm currently, we've just concluded a grant program, the Spark Grants. We had 21 entrepreneurs apply, and this week we're going to be celebrating the Spark Grant recipients at the Cabarrus Center with a public presentation of their startup enterprise ideas. So we're up and running and everything's going. And as Barbie said, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, it basically has developed what we consider to be the gold standard for venture mentor services. And this initiative came out of the Entrepreneurship Council, which is the governing body of the Cabarrus Center. The Chamber, the Economic Development Corporation, Small Business Center,
and about a dozen other entrepreneurship service organizations are involved in the Cabarrus Center. And our goal in the beautiful facility that we've been able to develop is to support the entrepreneurial journey from start to finish, whether you're a solopreneur or a small business or a larger corporate enterprise. Our goal is to provide a variety of services that help businesses get started and businesses to grow in the county. Go ahead to the next slide, if you will. So the Entrepreneurship Council has met frequently over the past 6 months to develop direction for the Cabarrus Center. And the three primary goals for this year is to stimulate a pipeline of entrepreneurs, to get the entrepreneurs out of the woodwork, which was one of the primary objectives of the Spark Grant program. We're developing a variety of programs to help businesses recover and grow, to recover from the impact of COVID in particular. So we're in the process of launching a retail lab, which will help retail businesses, Main Street type businesses, grow and strengthen here in not only in Concord, but in all of the cities in the county. I mentioned the Spark Grant program, and then the third primary initiative is the mentor program, because the mentor program basically is the underpinning of all the other programs that we're going to be offering at the Cabarrus Center. So we assigned a work group that had Barbie Jones, Irene Sachs with Kannapolis, Mark Spitzer with the North Carolina Research Campus, Natalie Williams with the Women's Business Center of Charlotte, Bill Amutis with the North Carolina Food Innovation Lab, myself and Paige Castrodale. We're on the working group to research how to get this program going. If you'll go ahead. So we looked at a lot of different mentor programs in markets of similar size and also in aspiration markets larger than Cabarrus County. And what we found is the very best of class is the program that has been developed at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the MIT program. They've been doing this for over 20 years, so they've made all the mistakes that everyone else makes if they try to do it themselves. And we were really impressed with their playbook, with the guidelines that they have for how to on-ramp businesses that are in need of mentoring services, and equally importantly, how to attract mentors that are highly credentialed and highly able to provide the kind of advice that we need for our small businesses. So after doing quite a lot of research and looking at comparable programs in other markets, we settled on the MIT program. It involves a 6-week immersion program. We will be able to send 5 representatives from various organizations, including the individual that will be the program manager, would go through a 6-week immersion training, which is going to be delivered virtually because of the current situation. And then following that, there's an in-depth training program for the initial group of mentors that we will develop, organize to be our pool of mentors that can assist entrepreneurs, whether they're starting a business, existing business, or a large business in need of advisory services from a non-biased group of mentors. And the program has several pillars behind it. It's not, I think one of the things that I want to emphasize on this slide is the credentialing. The individuals that we will be recruiting for the mentor pool are going to be very successful business people. They'll be entrepreneurs that have already started and succeeded in launching a small business, or they'll be C-suite individuals out of the corporate community and various other leaders in the community. For them to contribute their volunteer time to an effort like this, they're going to want to be working with an extremely well-run program, and the credentialing of the MIT program is going to help us attract top-rate mentors into the program, because they're going to know that it's being run the way top flight programs should be run. And then finally, I want to emphasize that the mentor program is the underpinning in a large way, but it's also an asset for the dozen or so organizations that are on the Entrepreneurship Council. So everyone will be able to tap into this program across all of the organizations that are participating in the Entrepreneurship Center, the Cabarrus Center. And that's really important because it's a shared resource that will be serving all of those organizations in the community. So what we're asking for today is help with the implementation costs. There is a one-time licensing fee from MIT to access all of the program materials, the agreements, the contracts, the various tools, the CRM tool that the program manager would use to run the program. All of that is included in the licensing fee, and the one-time licensing fee also includes annual updates to all of those materials. So although the initial fee is higher than other program costs to get a mentor program off the ground, it's got the best content, and it has an ongoing servicing capability. And then the training of the initial mentors, which is really important, is done with MIT at our side. Again, that's going to be done virtually, and the cost for that is $15,000. And then MIT recommends that we have a professional program manager manage the program. They estimate that it will take about 20 hours a week, and with an estimated salary range of $50,000 to $75,000 loaded with benefits. That's going to be a $30,000 to $40,000 annual expense. That's going to be covered by the Entrepreneurship Council organization. So we are all going to chip in to fund that salary on a sustainable, ongoing basis. So we're not here to ask for, the expenses down the road for the program manager. But we do need a little help getting the program manager hired and started so that we can get the program underway and start offering it up to the various organizations who will then pitch in and pay for the ongoing salary and administrative expenses. So that's what we're here to ask for tonight. So the funding ask is a total of $65,000 to help us get this program up and running, and to put it to use for small businesses that are trying to recover and grow from the current situation.
Excellent, thank you. Questions for Peter or Barbie?
I do have one quick one. How long is a person in the program before they fly on their own?
Yeah, that's a great question. The typical duration the way the MIT program works is there's a lead mentor, and then there's 2 to 3 additional mentors that are on a team. That's one of their principles is mentoring is best done not as an individual, but as a team, as a group with diverse skill sets that are matched up to the needs of the company that's going through the program. So the program manager does the triage of the companies that want to enter the program, and the program manager also helps present to the mentors what the needs are, so that the skill sets are matched up in terms of the team. The average duration of a mentor engagement is anywhere from a year to 3 years. It all depends on how engaged the founders or the owners of the company become with the mentors and vice versa. So it can be a very long-term relationship.
And that team can also transfer as it goes along. If they see that there's another skill set that's needed, you can sub another mentor in. So it's always a support system throughout the phase of the company's growth, which I think is a real benefit from anything we have right now.
Okay, other questions? No, one question that I had was regarding, you said the licensing fee included annual updates to the materials and so forth. What term, how many years does that last?
That's in perpetuity as long as you keep the program going.
Okay. Right, so we're gonna do that for 50 years.
At
Correct,
least.
at
At
least.
least, we want our new mentees to be our future mentors.
I forgot to mention that all the photographs in the slide deck are of the Cabarrus Center, so the construction is complete and we're up and running.
Very excited to have you over to see it.
Yeah.
We are suggesting that the CRF funds are used to fund this. So it does qualify under economic development in jobs.
Excellent. I think that if we can put these funds to use in the areas that they were intended, and I certainly feel that this is one of them, then we're doing what we're supposed to do. And there are plenty of businesses out there that, I mean, the resilience is remarkable, but I know how badly folks have suffered over the last couple of years, not only our existing businesses, but people that were in the process of starting a new business or pursuing that dream, that entrepreneurial dream. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity to help our local economy get those things back on track. Any other questions, comments?
Do you want to take a minute or so to tell the viewing audience how, if you're an entrepreneur sitting there wanting to know, well, how do I get involved?
Mr. Marsh?
Yeah, sure. So all you have to do is pick up the phone or just walk into the Cabarrus Center. We have a process for doing intake. So anyone that touches us either through the website or through any of our monthly programs that are designed to attract entrepreneurs, or folks that just walk in the door go through an intake process. So we ask them, how did you hear about us? What are your, are you starting a business? Are you currently involved in a business, or do you have needs for growing your business? So we kind of do preliminary intake, and then our community manager starts to help that entrepreneur be directed to the appropriate resources that we have teamed up at the Cabarrus Center. So the resident programs are already the EDC and the Small Business Center. And then Flywheel and my company has quite a lot of resources and programming, including the Flywheel Foundation, which has a lot of support resources for entrepreneurs. So we do that initial intake, figure out what their needs are, and then direct them to the appropriate organization and encourage them to go to the appropriate events that they will benefit from the most. That's kind of how it works.
Very good.
And,
Fantastic.
the idea is to make it an engaging experience for any business people or entrepreneurs that come to the Cabarrus Center. We try to create a welcoming social environment with a lot of meetings and events. We are going to be launching a monthly event called Venture Cafe, which is basically just going to be an open networking night for entrepreneurs to come and meet and learn more about the resources that are offered through the center, including the chamber and all the other host organizations. So that's kind of how it works.
Okay, thank you.
And
Very exciting.
I'd just like to thank Peter and his team and Paige Castrodale for bringing this concept to Cabarrus County. This is something that we've needed for a very long time. And it's been sort of a confusing puzzle trying to figure out how to do this. And we couldn't have done this without the Cabarrus Center. And so we're very excited to work with Peter and his team and bring all of our local resources together to grow. So we appreciate your consideration of this ask.
Absolutely, and I know that the Cabarrus Center has been somewhat hampered in going out to the public and inviting them in during during this pandemic time, but I have visited the facility on several occasions. It is just super attractive, well laid out to do the things that Peter has talked about. To have those resources there together is tremendous. I was able to participate in Paige and her group hosted one of our prospects that was looking at Cabarrus County there several weeks ago, and I could not think of a more attractive and well-appointed situation to bring those folks into. And for folks that do not know, and I think most people do, but the Cabarrus Center is located directly adjacent to the Cabarrus County Courthouse construction zone. Right across the street from the Governmental Center, and the Cabarrus Center is right next to Means Plaza, which we're excited about as well, and the historic Cabarrus County Courthouse on Union Street in Concord. So I hope that soon more folks will be able to visit there.
Yeah,
And,
it's a fabulous location, and we're extremely appreciative about all the construction that's going on around us, and eventually having the Means Plaza to kind of be an extension of the interior of our space is going to be fabulous.
Absolutely, and I think the construction's going to go on for quite a while.
Yeah, that's all right.
We'll hear more about that from our end a little bit later in the meeting, but also I think the city of Concord is getting ready to launch their streetscape
Yeah.
program, which is
Yeah.
going to be tremendous. And I think that we're going to see the same thing in downtown Concord that we are currently seeing in downtown Kannapolis, which
Yep.
Carol and I were talking right before the meeting. It's just amazing the number of people that are out and about walking and taking advantage of those assets. So we are truly fortunate to have all the players that are causing those things to happen. So thank you for your part in it. And we will, commissioners, any further questions? So will certainly take this up at our regular meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks very
Thank you,
much
guys.
for your
Appreciate it.
consideration. Thank you.
Okay, next up is item 3.5, sale of former infrastructure and asset management building. And, well, no, I'm skipping over one. Yeah, we'll go back to 3.4, Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, fiscal year 22 allocation of funds. And we're happy to have Rodney Harris to talk with us about that.
Good afternoon. So just a couple of items for the board's action here. The first is for the chairperson to sign the certification. The only note there is that we meet all of the standards except for the membership. So we do have 2 vacancies, the chief of police and the Cabarrus County Schools student seat that need to be filled. But other than that, we are in compliance. And then you also have the funding plan, which is the recommendation from the council of how to use the money coming in. So we're expecting $459,927, and we're allocating currently $448,562, which will leave an unallocated balance of $11,365. And all of these programs have been funded in prior years.
Great. Questions for Rodney?
These numbers don't match what's in the, are those updated numbers you're giving?
That should match what's in there.
Didn't sound like it on the cover sheet. Make sure that we're on the same page. Made it what we're looking at. What have you got there? That one?
The total should be $459,927.
459,927 is what we have on our.
Okay, there, sorry.
Yeah. I do serve on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, and I assure you that they have gone through a lengthy deliberation on all these programs, and the way that process works is there are requests for proposals that go out. Various organizations submit their program request, and then The allocation committee of the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council spends a great deal of time on that. Then it comes back to the full board as well. So they have gone through this process in great length to make sure that those funds are well utilized. They also take a great deal of care in making sure that they actually perform those activities so that those funds are expended for the purposes they're intended and do not have to be reverted at the end of the year, which sometimes is a bit of a juggling act. And this past year, with the situations that we've dealt with the pandemic and school in and out and the justice system changing the way they do things, it has been particularly challenging, but I think they're on track to have a very successful year next year. Any questions, comments, concerns? All righty, thank you, sir. And now we will go to the sale of the former Infrastructure and Asset Management Building, and that will be Mike and Kyle.
I wrote it, I'll go ahead and start it. The county anticipates the completion of the relocation of the infrastructure and asset management operations from 242 General Services Drive in Concord to the new operations center located at 44 Cabarrus Avenue West in Concord by the middle of May 2021. The city of Concord has been in discussion with the county about purchasing the former infrastructure and asset management building, so that's the green and white building there on General Services Drive. And the city does own the land. We actually have a grounds lease with them for all the facilities in that area. And oddly enough, on a side note, we are renewing that grounds lease right now. So it's actually good timing since we're moving out of 2 facilities there. Both the city and county have conducted appraisals on the building, and we just need the board's approval to start having discussions. The 2 appraisal values, there is a difference in those 2 appraisal values. So there will be some conversation on what the actual sale value is going to be.
The 2 buildings that we're vacating, one is the
Fleet. Yeah, one is the infrastructure and asset management. That's the one that the city would like. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is for their traffic services. And I don't believe that's actually the programming. I think that's actually where they build the actual streetlights.
Yeah, and so the fleet,
Is becoming an auxiliary building. We have worked with the city fire department to install fencing inside of that, and half of that is being used for storage for household hazardous waste, which is right below the fleet building on the bottom of the hill. And you know, HHW has never grown in footprint, but obviously grown in the folks that
Right.
use it. So we're having to get some of that stuff and keep it in a dry storage up there. And the other half will be used for animal shelter officers, and that will allow them to move out of a large office that they have up at the top of the hill and allow the actual staff, your adoption folks, your kennel folks, to expand in that office area and help us delay an expansion of the animal shelter office area. So we're now terming that as the auxiliary building because it serves no public interface.
right. Excellent. Questions, commissioners? Okay, well, I think that it is beneficial to both us and the city to be able to successfully complete this. Do you have anything to add?
No,
Mike?
I think he covered it all. Yep, so, yeah, the only thing left now will be the animal shelter and that auxiliary building, so we're,
And household hazardous waste.
well, that's on the
Okay.
other parcels there, so that's not going anywhere. So, yeah, so I think we're good. They're excited about getting it. They needed the square footage. And again, this was a deal that the city and the county entered into a long time ago. I don't remember the year. It's been quite a while that they would continue to own the land and allow us to build the animal shelter and the other complex out there. So
Great.
now that we're moving, we no longer need it, and they needed it. And so it worked out really well.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is item 3.6, Health Insurance Fund Balance Amendment, and we're delighted to have Wendy Hagler to talk with us about that.
Good afternoon. At the end of each fiscal year, finance reviews the medical and health insurance fund. The budgets are created based on trended claims provided by our previous third-party administrator, Mark III. And this year, we have increases in medical claims throughout the fiscal year. There's 3 months, August, February, and March, which were greater than $1 million. So this budget amendment will appropriate fund balance to cover those expected increase in claims that will cover us through this fiscal year.
Okay, questions for Wendy? Very good.
All right. So the next agenda item is an item we discussed at the budget retreat. And this budget amendment will budget $1.85 million. It'll be a transfer from the Community Investment Fund. And Cabarrus County will use this to purchase 2 mobile units, and they're for the early college at Rowan Cabarrus.
Questions on that one, commissioners? Have they located the units?
I believe they have located
Yeah.
the one. This is why we went ahead and put it on the agenda.
Uh-huh. Excellent. That,
Must be more information to come.
So they had found the unit, the first of them, but it actually sold last week.
Oh, jeez.
So they are going to have to go back to find a available unit. So this agenda item will give them the ability to act quickly the next time they find a used
so
unit.
maybe the next one won't get sold out from under
Yes,
us. Yeah.
yes.
Well, this is something that will make the folks at the community college very happy when we accomplish this. They've had some differences in schedules that create some challenges for them. And of course, this is, when we say mobile units, I think people's mind thinks of something different than what these actually are. The ones at the other early college on 29 are mobile units like what we're talking about, and they've done an excellent job. You would not realize that they are mobile units in most cases. Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you both. And we will move to item 3.8 from Infrastructure and Asset Management, Cabarrus County Courthouse Expansion, Construction Manager at Risk Contract Extension, and increase from contingency funding.
Thank you. I'm going to call up Jason Harris with Messer Construction. We also have Chris Menelowski with Messer, if we need to bring him up, but we're a little short on chairs right now. And we do have Tom Potts is on virtually from Silling Architects. So if we need to hear anything from the design team, we can. Cabarrus County and I will go through the history of all the GMPs or guaranteed maximum prices with the actual construction manager at risk that we have across the street. Currently, Cabarrus County has a guaranteed maximum price-based contract with Messer Construction for the courthouse expansion, the construction manager at risk services. On December 13th, 2019, Messer Construction bid out the scope of work for the site enabling portion of the project, so that would be the site work. This was referred to as GMP 1 and is considered an extension to their original contract, which was for pre-construction services. GMP 1.5 was executed in August of 2020 and included the bid packages for the rammed aggregate piers, the below-grade concrete, and the tower crane. The GMP 2 package, which represents the remainder of the bid packages for the new courthouse building, was executed at the end of December 2020. Currently, the contract with Messer does not contain any owner's contingency. The only funds in the contract for owner-driven changes is surplus funds from buyout packages. County staff is requesting $900,000 be transferred from the project contingency fund into the actual contract with Messer. This owner's contingency will be used to fund owner-requested scope changes as well as bulletin updates. County staff is here to present a summary of the current bulletins that are driving what we're discussing. So to explain all that, I know that I've been up in front of you a lot of times talking about public art or GMPs or many things that go on with the courthouse. But the county, when we were budgeting this process, both the finance department and the county manager's office, there is an account that is outside of the GMP that holds the contingency for the project. And we decided through the GMP packages not to put that in there. Okay, we knew that we were going to have to come up at some point. In fact, there's already been one presentation that I gave to this board about a chiller redundancy project to connect the sheriff's department and the courthouse via the tunnel that we have underground so that we can share basically chilled water between the two facilities. And at some point, that project will be bid out and flushed out, and I will come in front of the board with that. We kept it out of that. For instance, the schools do have an actual owner's contingency in their GMP. We kept it out of that because of our buyout packages. It was able to create an owner's contingency, and every change order that goes through has to be signed off by the design team, the construction team, and the owner team. So it goes through an entire process. It's outlined in the actual AIA contract on how it goes. So I know where every single dollar is coming from, what allowance it's going to, what contingency it's coming from, but we have no true owner's contingency. It was basically funded by Messer doing a very good job on the buyout package and probably driving the prices and also the design of the project, quite frankly. So what are driving some of the changes now are these bulletins that we're seeing on these design. And Jason can speak about them, the design team's on here also. But to kind of give you a summary, a lot of this is utility driven. So things that couldn't be flushed out during the initial design as we were getting this, and also things that you wouldn't see until you uncovered them. So whether it be Means Avenue, Union, Corbin, the water system that feeds the historic courthouse and all that, how that comes in, but all of that is driving these changes that we have no true owner's contingency to cover. And again, this is not something that would be covered by the GMP. These are scope changes based on things that we're finding every time we dig something up. So if you want specific examples, I can tell you right now there's 3 bulletins. I think we have almost 6 total, but there's 3 of them that are driving actual cost. And they are specifically utilities. They are what we've had to do to keep the historic courthouse running in terms of how that whole network of both utilities, water, sewer, electricity go to that building and keeping that all running, and then also bringing a lot of it up to code with what was there. They didn't have a true backflow preventer that's even legal, so we've had to go in and install a lot of those things and make the provisions for them. And that's not just Jason or Messer doing that work. That is the design team having to go back, redo the drawings, add all that in, and then Jason to go out and bid it out again with the same subs we're already using, and then get that information. Well, up until this point, we've been able to pay for that with our fake owner's contingency that was created by these low buyouts on these packages. And we no longer have that ability. So as we move forward, we're going to need a true owner's contingency. There's also a driven bulletin, being a bulletin that actually the county initiated about the actual lighting of the building. So originally, when the building was rendered and mocked up, it had the green city streetlights along Church and along Corbin. Well, as you start to build that building and see how much that building is going to kind of come out on your road and where those streetlights are going to be and the aesthetics of those streetlights compared to the facade of a $100 million building, you realize that that's probably not in our best interest to do that. So we've added more lighting onto the exterior of the building so that we can work with the city at removing those city streetlights in front of our 2 corners specifically. So that is a bulletin 4, and that right now that's out for pricing. So again, this is to transfer $900,000 from a bucket outside of the contract into the contract, so that the county can execute that as the county sees fit, based on the scope changes.
Right. So the funds were still identified for the project, they were just outside of the
Well,
contract.
that's what I was gonna say. When you say we don't have an owner's contingency, we actually do have an
Yes.
owner's contingency.
No,
We
no,
just need
yeah.
to move it over
Yes.
and change the label on the bucket that
Right.
says Messer/County instead of just
Right.
county.
We have to do a change order to their contract, yes.
And that was so that it could come back before you guys to have the approval before it was done.
Transparency was important, which is why I came to the board long ago about the redundancy project. Before I even started on it, I wanted to kind of understand what your thought processes were on that. And the same thing with the public art. So it is very important for a project this large that you all understanding why it is what we're doing.
Well, it's good news to hear that your buyout has been so successful to this point. With current material pricing, that's probably not gonna be the case from this point forward, so.
That was good foreshadowing for the EMS headquarters update. I'll give you in a half an hour.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Other questions? In quick layman's terms, explain buyout. What do you mean, these buyouts?
Yep, so when we bid the project, we had a budget for the phase of work that we bid out. The net difference of that, the savings, if you will, that's buyout savings. So the amount we're able to buy the work for, the delta between the budget we had and what we were able to buy it for, that's buyout savings.
Okay.
And those funds were moved into an owner's contingency within our contract as part of GMP number 2. And so now it's taking outside the contract money back into our contract. That will be approved by Kyle and the county staff as they see fit.
Right, that makes sense. So, and then the question that I'll ask that doesn't make sense, undoubtedly, is, would there ever be a time when, owner requested scope changes could cause the price to go down?
Yes,
Yeah,
credits,
yeah.
so we have one, it's a small one, but there are, where the design team sees opportunity to remove scope that's unnecessary, then yes, we would ask for a pricing change from our subcontractors, and they're able to provide a credit for work that they're not going to be providing anymore.
That's good news. That's
Yeah.
not the answer I expected.
Well, it's the unicorn you don't often see, but yes, it does happen. So our design team is very good, and obviously Messer is, a construction manager at risk. So they're looking for certain things, and they're bringing it in front of the design team and us and saying, hey, I think we can achieve what you want to achieve via going a different route that's going to be much more cost effective. So we do, that's why we meet as much as we meet.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of us doing the construction manager at risk.
Right.
Okay, other questions? Okay, very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we move now to item 3.9 from Planning and Development, Carolina Farm Stewardship Association Annual Report. And we are happy to have Kelly Sifford with us for that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I believe that Karen McSwain and Roland McReynolds and possibly Jacob Leach are on joining us electronically. But to cover the general agenda item, they will do a presentation, their annual report, telling you what all they've been able to do in difficult times. We also have our lease extension that needs to happen. That lease expires June 30th. So we want to ask you to allow staff to execute that contract. And finally, as part of that request, they have requested $80,000 this year in the budget. They have also requested as part of their contract $80,000 annually for the next 5 years. And the reasoning behind that is for planning purposes and grant match and things like that. They're unable to show a solid commitment from us because we've been doing it annually. However, that money is coming from the deferred tax fund, and it would have to be available annually if you so choose to go that route. And are they on? And so Karen and Roland should be on to speak with you now.
I am here and I am trying to share my screen.
It looks, yep.
I'm still here. Can you see my screen?
We cannot. And your picture went away also. We just have KM now. Now we have your screen.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Great. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, thank you for having me virtually. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have been up to at Lomax this past year. Right. I just wanted to start with the CFSA's vision. We did go through a strategic planning process in 2020. Our strategic plan didn't change a whole lot, but wanted to share with you and viewers what that vision is. And it is a sustainable regional food system that is good for all consumers, farmers, farm workers, and ecosystems. Our mission is to advocate, educate, and build connections to create sustainable food systems in the Carolinas centered on local and organic agriculture. We have two of many programs at CFSA that move our strategic plan forward, and one is Farm Services. And that team works to sustain and grow an environmentally sound, economically viable, and socially just food system. And we also have an education team that works to increase knowledge, understanding, and commitment in all aspects of organic, local, and regenerative food and agricultural systems. Lomax is part of our Farm Services team, and the goal of Lomax is to support local organic farming while encouraging a new generation of farmers. And we have a number of different programs that we run at Lomax. One is our Farmers in Training program, our FIT program, where we provide land, infrastructure, and technical assistance to farmers that are launching farm businesses. We have a Grow to Donate program. We have our Soils program, which is students outside immersive learning at Lomax. We also do on-farm research and community engagement. In 2021, we currently have 4 FITs that are starting or continuing to maintain farming businesses out at Lomax. And we also had 16 either FIT graduates or other community members that are using infrastructure and renting land at Lomax. So they're using land, they're using greenhouse space, high tunnel space, walk-in coolers, post-harvest handling equipment. Lomax has always done some donation work, but this past year we greatly expanded our donation efforts. And so we worked closely with 2 organizations and have donated almost 10,000 pounds of produce. One of those organizations is the Cooperative Christian Ministries, and the other organization that we donated to was the Bulb. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the Bulb because it's a community partner that we've really increased our collaboration with this past year. The Bulb is a nonprofit that operates 12 pay-as-you-can mobile markets in food insecure neighborhoods in Charlotte, but they also have 2 in Concord. And so this past year, we've started working with them on a community garden space for their organization at Lomax. And so that community garden space is doing a number of different things. One is it's providing mentorship opportunities to additional apprentices who are out at Lomax learning, but they're also growing food that they're donating through those mobile markets. And so we've been partnering with them on the past year to do that, and we recently collaborated with them on a grant proposal that would increase the Bulb's production of produce for donation, as well as Lomax's ability to produce more food to be able to service an additional 500 households. Our Soils program, which is our educational program, we're not able to do a lot of that this past year. Just wanted to let folks know or remind folks know that typically through that Soils program, we host over 500 sixth graders that come out to Lomax every year to do some hands-on learning, STEM learning activities. We also typically host 8 to 10 workshops a year. In the past, we've worked with Rowan Cabarrus Community College to participate and host some of their classes out there. And we have hosted Davidson College interns. That's what we typically do. Obviously, we've been fairly closed down to the public this past year, but we did do a number of things in our soils program out at Lomax. We conducted 4 webinars in collaboration with extension agents for over 140 participants. And the idea with those webinars was really to bridge the gap between hands-on learning and virtual learning that we weren't able to do by having people physically out at Lomax. We also worked with Cabarrus County High School engineering and carpentry class students to design and build mobile tool sheds. And we supported Cabarrus County Schools career and STEM programs through videos and virtual collaborations. We continue to conduct on-farm research. Right now, we're evaluating scale-appropriate no-till equipment. I presented on this last time I came and presented with you all. We're in the middle of our 2nd year on that project. We also this year did some demonstration projects on broccoli production in collaboration with Cooperative Extension. We did some variety trials with an organic seed company. We did a butternut squash variety trial evaluating downy mildew resistance, and we also finished up a trial looking at the efficacy of biopesticides. Our community engagement, of course, as you can imagine, was greatly reduced this past year. Just to remind folks that we typically host 300 to 400 visitors out at Lomax every year from a variety of different community organizations within the county. We're hoping, as things, numbers go down and things ease up a little bit, we'll be able to get back into our community engagement activities. We typically have more publicity than this, but as you can imagine, this past year, not a whole lot of publicity, but we were featured in the Independent Tribune in May for our efforts to grow and grow produce. And we also, at the end of 2019, I was surprised when I saw this to be part of the S&D Coffee and Tea's sustainability report, which was talking about their support of Lomax. So that was an interesting place to get some publicity. We continue to increase the infrastructure out at Lomax. A number of years ago, we, with NRCS cost share assistance, we built a large high tunnel. But this past year, we secured funding from the Carolina Farm Credit Corporate Mission Fund to put up 2 additional high tunnels. And this allows us, we now have 3 high tunnels out there that really enable us to demonstrate, scale appropriate season extension high tunnel production that will meet the needs of farmers, whether or not they're new, beginning and small farmers, or if they're commercial growers. We have the ability to show them and demonstrate high tunnel production at a level that will meet anyone's needs. I wanted to share with you what the budget for the Lomax program looks like. Land management is a big cost of running Lomax. Equipment, maintenance and repair, utilities such as fuel, propane, electricity. Those are some of the costs that we rely on the county's budget to help cover those. And those are also the costs that are very difficult for us to be able to get through corporate donations, foundations, or grant funding. We also have a number of other costs: county tax, organic certification, community engagement, our programs, our research projects, our educational programs, and the FIT program, our fundraising efforts, and our administration costs. You can see it typically comes in about $222,000. And so we, are asking the county to cover some of the management costs of managing and the upkeep of the Lomax property. And here's just some contact information. Our Lomax coordinator and our organic research coordinator are 2 staff members that are based out of Lomax. contact information for myself and our Associate Executive Director for Operations. And that is the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have questions for Karen?
Karen, this might, you talked about the bulb program, and 10 of the 12 programs were in Mecklenburg County. Is that because there's only 2 existing programs or two projects in Cabarrus that's available? Or is there possibilities to expand that to other areas in Cabarrus?
Well, I can't speak for them because it's their organization, but I would imagine that, you know, there is a need. And if we could support them in expanding, I would imagine they'd be interested, but I can't speak directly to that.
Mike, traditionally, I don't think 80's been the number. What's historically been, is it?
Just the last couple of years, it's been 80.
Has it been 80? Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, the last,
Okay.
at least
I thought it was
last year,
50
maybe
something.
2 years.
Yeah.
okay, so they're just asking for the same as what
But
we've
it's been
done
on an
before.
annual basis. It's not a commitment over the next 5
5
years. Then
years.
that's what they're asking for, the commitment.
Okay, so that's the difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
that, Karen, I don't know if you want to elaborate on the issues you've had with fundraising, with that lack of long-term commitment.
It comes into play a couple different places. One is a lot of the federal grant funds that we apply to often ask for a cash match, 25, 50, sometimes 100% match. And for things that are happening out there, we have to demonstrate that we have that match in hand or committed for it to be able to count as a match. And so having to go year to year, we can't use any of this funding as a match because it's not a committed match. So that's the one challenge. The other challenge is, just being able to know that we have the funding to manage the land that is then the foundation for the programs that support, that land supports.
Has there been any progress towards, I know that we've had discussions over the years about an actual educational facility building there at the property? Where are those conversations now?
So we did receive grant funding from the Cannon Foundation, I believe it was 2 years ago, to work with Kimley Horn and Little Engineering to put together the plans for that building. And we do have those plans put together, and I believe I shared those when I presented 2 years ago, back in 2019. I think that they were finished right before the May meeting. So I shared those back then. We have not moved that project forward. We are hopeful and looking forward to doing that. We had a number of staffing changes on our end with a new Lomax Farm coordinator and new development staff, and then COVID hit. So we have not launched a capital campaign, but are in a situation to bring those plans back out, look at them and discuss moving forward.
Right. Has there been any linkage between, I'm just thinking about the different organizations that I hear from talking about food deserts and food insecurity and some of the work that the Cabarrus Health Alliance has done in that area, as well as North Carolina Research Campus with some of their research, and then a third group is the Children Win group that's talked about childhood obesity, and I know that that's been part of the conversation about the lack of availability of, some of it's an educational piece, training people the appropriate things to buy and prepare, as opposed to, in some cases, the availability. So can you just talk about any of relationships that might exist between any of those organizations?
We have not worked specifically with those organizations, but CFSA did launch a program during COVID called Farms Share, which is a program that initially started about a year ago in response to two issues. One, farmers waking up one morning and all of their markets were closed and the restaurants were closed and they had produce that was ready to go to market. And also the issue that a lot of restaurant workers were all of a sudden unemployed and out of a job. So we launched a project called Farm Shares, which was initially funded through Blue Cross Blue Shield to do a CSA box for unemployed restaurant workers and buying produce from farmers that were lacking a market. And we have since kind of done 3 different cohorts of that, and there certainly have been farmers and recipients in the Charlotte Concord area. And we are in the process of putting together the roadmap that would transition Farm Shares away from a COVID relief project into a long-term program that would help address chronic food insecurity. So we have somebody at CFSA that is working on that and working with different health alliance and healthcare providers that are doing healthy alternatives through the Medicaid Transformation Act. We have somebody on staff that will help those programs connect with farmers so that we have, so we're ensuring that that produce and that food is coming from our local farmers. So we are doing some of that. I have not reached out specifically to the organizations that you've mentioned, but would be happy to do so. And as I mentioned, Lomax is greatly increasing the amount of produce that we are growing for donation at Lomax, and then submitted a few foundation proposals this year in order to help with that.
Great. And I think the relationship that you have with Cooperative Christian Ministries probably accomplishes some of those things, because I know that they are working with some of those organizations as well. But certainly, the program that you talked about with the surplus during the pandemic and restaurants being closed just brings to my mind every single day there's something I hadn't thought about, you know, the negative impact. And so that certainly sounds like making the best of a bad situation. And there are very few people that are untouched by what we've experienced over the past year. Other questions, commissioners? I think Commissioner Shue is queuing up.
Yes, I did. Karen, you're asking for $80,000 for 5-year commitment. Is there anything specific about the 5-year part? I mean, obviously it gives you more stabilization as far as from the county be just as good?
Well, I think the other reason why we're looking at 5 years rather than something shorter is having that commitment before we start a capital campaign to build a building out at Lomax. You know, the first design that we've worked on right now with the engineers, it's a very expensive building, and I'm not sure that that's going to be what ultimately ends up at Lomax. But I think before we really go down that road of investing our staff time in a capital campaign, we'd like to have some sort of commitment from the county that they're, you know, committed to what we're currently doing.
Okay, I can understand that. Thank you, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The lease agreement is also for 5 years, the extension that we're proposing, so that's kind of tied to that too.
So Kelly, the annual proceeds or revenues in the present use value fund, are they continuing to maintain the levels each year in order to pay that off?
They were, we did do a large commitment on the St. Stephen's Park.
Right.
However, we are going to be pursuing grant funds there as well. So it will continue to grow, and we may be able to de-obligate some of that from that planned purchase if we can get grant funds for that as well. So as I understand it, and Rodney, you can correct me, or Wendy if I'm wrong, but there's certainly enough for the first year and possibly enough for all right now.
Okay. Dave, you got anything to add to that?
No, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so that was gonna be my question, the recurring funds, for the 4 years out, are we still covering ourselves with those revenues each year? Because there's less farmland going off.
Yeah. Suzanne calculated, I think, that we were collecting 400 to 500,000 a year.
Okay. And the other question, just for the board's perspective on this, is that as they look to continue to as they look to maybe build buildings on site, we have to do some work ahead of time with utilities? And
Correct. And
is
Kyle and
there
I-
enough money to cover that?
Not in that fund. Kyle and I did have some discussions with them 2 weeks ago now, I guess, about, what opportunities we have and what, what direction they need to go. And we got into discussions about the building that was designed originally and whether or not that's really the direction that CFSA wants to go, or if they think that something potentially more economical will work. So we're beginning those conversations, but no, there's not enough money in the deferred tax at this time for that.
Okay, for the benefit of the public that might be listening to this discussion, and please correct me if I don't explain it correctly, but the funds that we're talking about using for this are funds that come from farmland in the county that gets a reduced tax rate, and that is to encourage open space and agriculture and farming. And once they sell that property to a developer for other purposes, then they are required to go back 3 years? 3 years, and pay those discounts that they have received in taxes over that period of time. That's their incentive to keep that property in farm production. And when they cease to do that, that's where this program is funded from. So that is the purpose of this, and that's how those funds are generated to promote these types of uses.
That's correct.
Yeah, so this is not coming out of our general fund, not coming out of regular taxpayer funding.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, Karen, we thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Okay. Okay, we move now to item 3.10 from Planning and Development. Proposed text amendments, changes, and Susie Morris, I think, is with
She's
us
on
virtually to talk about those.
Good evening. What you have before you is a series of 3 text amendments, each dealing with different items discussed in the ordinance. These amendments did rise out of discussions with legal, so they have been reviewed by legal. The first item is junk vehicles. The proposed text amendment to Chapter 6 essentially clarifies that junk vehicles are not permitted in any zoning district, but it does still allow that one hobby car per parcel as long as certain standards are met for storage of that particular vehicle. And this would not apply to, if there was a properly permitted salvage yard or something like that in the county, it would not be applicable to that business or any other business where junk cars might be expected as part of that business. The second one is related to recreational vehicles. The proposed amendment it touches Chapter 2, Chapter 4, and Chapter 6. But really the purpose of this is to clarify that RVs cannot be used as temporary or permanent dwellings or as an accessory to a dwelling. The only place really that RVs are permitted to be occupied would be in a manufactured home park, or we are adding in that if there is a catastrophic event like a fire or a flood, that if someone is rebuilding, they would be able to use an RV temporarily, but for no more than 180 days. This also kind of brings all of the standards related to recreational vehicles to one place so that it's easier for people to find them and use the ordinance if they're looking up that particular topic, because right now it's kind of peppered in different chapters. The third item is a proposed change to Chapter 13. And what this is intended to do is to provide additional flexibility in administration of approved plan modifications. So a plan that has to go to the board for a conditional use permit, or what's now called a special use permit. Staff would have some additional flexibility in how the plans, the modifications are approved, when the minor modifications may be approved, and then what standards are to be used to determine if that change is considered a minor modification. So again, a lot of this is clarifying the language that we had, or bringing it all into one place so that people can find it. Planning and Zoning Commission did vote to forward these on to the commission for final consideration. And we will need to hold a public hearing to take in public input at the regular meeting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I don't know, I think legal, Rich and David, I think, are both on the call. I don't know if they have anything that they would like to add.
No, if you have any questions, I'll come up.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for Susie, David, or Rich?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask Susie a question in reference to the RV text amendment that you're talking about. Susie, if you got somebody or know somebody, or there's people in the county that are currently living in RVs, that kind of thing, are they considered as in a grandfather clause, or does it pertain to them, and when does it become effective?
This standard is already in effect. It's been in effect since the ordinance was adopted, so we are not changing anything that has to do with that particular use of an RV. This ordinance actually allows that flexibility for the RV if someone does have, if we have a significant weather event or something like that, not living in an RV has actually been in the ordinance since it was adopted. So that there is no change to that. It's not a permitted use.
Thank you, Susie. So if we did have, a weather event and someone they had a camper sitting out there and they wanted to use it, would they need to get a permit to use that?
We currently have a temporary use permit for a FEMA mobile unit. And if this language is adopted, I think we would add things similar to that so that that time frame is established. And there's a start date and an end date so that it does not turn into an enforcement issue.
Exactly. I understand. And, I don't know if there is or how many are, in situations like that, but, chances are those people aren't viewing this anyway, but you don't never know. And so just to get the information out there, I want the people to know, what we're doing on that and why. Thank you, Susie.
Certainly.
Okay, other questions, commissioners? I guess the one that I would ask is, you talked about the RV units and weather events or other catastrophes, and you mentioned 180 days. Being involved with several construction projects currently, I find that 180 days in construction speak means 360 days. So how, if a tree fell on your house, let's say, and you moved temporarily into the RV, and of course 180 days wasn't gonna get the appropriate repairs, I would imagine it's not difficult to get an extension on that, or how challenging is that? I was just curious about that procedure.
So that 180 days really rises up from the fire code along with some other codes. That is what is typically considered a temporary occupancy. And then after that 180 days, it kind of turns into permanent occupancy, and there are other items that come along with that. With an RV can never be permitted as a permanent occupancy because it's not built to North Carolina building code standards. Neither are park models. A lot of people think that they are, but they aren't. So if the county had a significant weather event, and someone was, struggling with the insurance company or something like that, I think we would potentially look to work with them and maybe extend that permit. It was the recommendation from legal to use that 180 days as that initial allowance for those type of events.
Great, and I think you answered my question. We do have flexibility to work with folks if there are extenuating circumstances.
Correct.
Right, very good. Okay.
Susie, I know in the past, there's been opportunities for people who have bought land without a house and they're gonna build their house. Does this allow them the 6 months as well to live there while they're building their house?
The language that we have in the ordinance allows a mobile home to be on the same parcel. It does not allow a recreational vehicle to be used for construction of a new home.
Is there a reason why we chose to not do that, the mobile home versus the RV?
I'm not sure. That has been in the ordinance since it was adopted about living in the RVs. And allowing the mobile home, if somebody was living in the mobile home and saving up for a new house, they can get a permit and then build that permanent structure. If we would allow the dual occupancy, since the ordinance only allows one primary structure per parcel. That's how it has been handled. If that was something that the board wanted to entertain, we could possibly look at that, but that typically does rise to an enforcement issue at that point because there is no set time limit for that on construction of a house.
I guess the definition of RV is pretty broad, from a tiny little camping trailer to a big mobile unit, right? All of those would fall in that category?
It really gets down to the construction standard and whether or not that vehicle is designed to move around. So even, a tiny house on wheels, people think it's just a tiny house, but a tiny house on wheels actually has a title and it's considered an RV. So what we're talking about here are vehicles that have titles with them that are considered to be mobile. Not, if you all remember the last text amendments that we did, we had that 300 square foot temporary healthcare facility that could be placed on a property, but that would not be on wheels, that would be on a permanent foundation. But again, the tricky thing with the RVs is that they're not built to North Carolina minimum building code. So placing an RV on a permanent foundation really isn't, it would need to be more of a structure or a manufactured home to be durable and long lasting.
Right. Okay, other questions?
I think my only concern is with the 180 days, whether you're building or a natural disaster will come through. I've known from, people building homes seems to be a little bit longer than 6 months. So if they were to use their owned RV that they already own, that could put them in a, would you say, a dual occupancy situation, and that's not allowable?
Right now, you cannot live in an RV in the county at all. Whether you're building a house, whether it is, an emergency type situation. So what is proposed with the amendment is only to allow some flexibility where if we had a significant weather event, that citizens would be able to occupy an RV. What is currently proposed does not have any language in it that would allow someone to live in an RV and construct a new house.
So we're actually loosening the restrictions, because now you would not be allowed to live in your RV after a significant weather event while your home was being repaired. So we're,
That one I
okay.
get, yeah, that one I get, but the building, if someone has an RV, and I guess that was my question was, you had mentioned mobile unit, mobile home on that, that's an additional cost to the potential homeowner that's building a home. That was my concern, if you had an RV, would you allow that during construction to save the homeowner some, I guess, double funds used for building?
Correct. Right now, that is not something that the ordinance allows, and it has not allowed that since its initial adoption.
Even if we wanted to, if the building code council, if it's against the North Carolina Building Code, even if we wanted to, we can't allow it. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if they actually address the temporary occupancy, but because those structures are not built to the North Carolina Building Code, if we had people living in them, it could create, situations where we might have people who experience more damage because of those types of construction than they would in a permanent or stick-built structure, or even in a manufactured home, because that manufactured home is built to North Carolina code standards. And it would be, fire code, all of those types of things that come along with having that certification, where recreational vehicles do not have that type of certification. Tiny houses on wheels, they look like they're constructed like a house, but they're not built to go up and down the road like an RV is. So, there's those different types of constructions based on what that vehicle is being used for. And a lot of times what you see is a tiny house on wheels that's constructed out of wood actually begins to fall apart because it's not constructed to go up and down the road like it does. So I don't know necessarily that the building code would prohibit it, or any, if there's anything as far as occupancy, but it may get back to that 180 days. I know that 180 days is referenced in the fire code. It's referenced in the floodplain, the model ordinance that the state pushes out to us. So there do seem to be some triggers that come along with that 180 days. And, when we were having the discussions about the wedding facilities, if a tent's up over that 180-day time frame, it's no longer considered temporary either. And then there are certain standards that come with it.
It sounds like we are offering some opportunities that we haven't in the past, and so it will be interesting to see if during this public hearing, that folks have comments to make about that. Anything else from the board? Okay, thank you, Susie.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, we move now to item 3.11, property and liability. And I think we have John Bradley with us virtually, along with Kyle, to talk about that item.
Yes, this is a motion to approve the related budget amendment that is attached to appropriate funds from the Property and Liability Internal Service Fund to the General Fund to replace a sheriff's animal control vehicle that was destroyed on April 16th of this year. That truck was struck by a FedEx delivery van at an intersection when it did not stop. And our officer actually rolled a couple times and is just getting back to work now. And it's a total loss on that vehicle. So obviously, while we negotiate and handle the mediation of getting our money back from FedEx, we do need to put a patrol car out there. So this is the typical standard. I'm usually in front of you 2 to 3 times a year, asking for this budget amendment to be approved so that we can move forward on piggybacking the costs we had already had on the replacement vehicles this year.
Okay, Any questions, commissioners? Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, next item, 3.12, Tax Administration, Resolution of Administration of Ad valorem Taxes. And we're happy to have David Thrift with us to talk about that item.
Good evening, Commissioners. Recently, our Finance Department reached out to me with an effort to reduce cost associated with sending refund checks that are small amounts, looking to limit and establish a threshold to limit the amount of checks we're sending out. I think that was a kind of a countywide effort. The way that works with property taxes is a little bit different. So doing some research with Mr. Goldberg helped out. We identified 2 statutes that will actually allow us to implement some cost-saving measures in terms of what check amounts we send out. So the 2 statutes involved, the first is 105-357, and it addresses how we handle underpayments and overpayments of less than $1. So we have a situation where either an overpayment or underpayment takes place and it's less than $1. If it's a situation that would typically be refunded, we would simply count that as an overage, not send a refund. And if it was a situation where the amount paid was not enough to cover the entire bill, but it was less than $1, we would simply write that off as an underpayment. The second statute is 105-321, which addresses overpayments of less than $15. So if a taxpayer were to send in a payment, the payment was over the amount due, and we would typically have a refund situation. If that amount was less than $15, we would not immediately send a refund unless the taxpayer requested that they receive that writing. So we would hold that money until the end of the fiscal year. And at that point, if the taxpayer had still not requested that refund, we would apply that as a credit to their next year's tax bill. So those are the 2 ways we thought to address that. I will read the resolution we propose. Overpayments of ad valorem taxes, resolution on the administration of small underpayments and overpayments of ad valorem taxes. Whereas the administrative costs associated with collecting and refunding of small ad valorem tax overpayments and underpayments exceeds the value of the overpayments and underpayments. And whereas General Statute 105-357C authorizes a local government to adopt a resolution that eliminates the need to collect small underpayments of $1 or less, and that eliminates the need to refund small overpayments of $1 or less unless the taxpayer requests a refund of the overpayment before the end of the fiscal year in which such overpayment is made. And whereas General Statute 105-321G authorizes a local government to adopt a resolution directing its tax collector not to mail a refund of an overpayment if the refund is less than $15. And whereas that General Statute 105-321G provides that upon adoption of a resolution authorizing the tax collector not to make a refund of an overpayment if the refund is less than $15, the tax collector shall make a report of those amounts of those refunds to the Board of Commissioners, implement a system by which payment of the refund may be made to the taxpayer who comes into the office of the tax collector seeking the refund, and as to the refunds that are not requested in person by the end of the fiscal year, implement a system to apply the minimal refund as a credit against the tax liability of the taxpayer for taxes due for the next succeeding year. And whereas the Board of Commissioners previously adopted Resolution 2002-21 on June 13, 2002, which directs the tax administrator to not collect ad valorem taxes when the original principal amount due is $5 or less, pursuant to General Statute 105-321F. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. Pursuant to General Statute 105-357C, the Board of Commissioners directs the Cabarrus County Tax Administrator to treat small underpayments of $1 or less as fully paid, and not to refund small overpayments of $1 or less unless the taxpayer requests a refund of the overpayment before the end of the fiscal year in which the small overpayment is made. Tax administrator must implement a process required by General Statute 105-357C. 2, pursuant to General Statute 105-321G, the Board of Commissioners authorizes the Cabarrus County Tax Administrator not to mail a refund of any overpayment if the refund is less than $15. The tax administrator must implement processes required by General Statute 105-321. This resolution shall remain in effect until repealed or amended by resolution of the Board of Commissioners. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall be in effect with respect to fiscal year 2022 and shall remain in effect until amended or repealed by resolution of the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, questions for David? I'm a little bit confused as the difference between the $1 and the $15.
So in a case where it's less than $1 and the taxpayer does not make a request by the end of the fiscal year, then that is not an amount that we then credit to the next year.
So that we don't
We do not.
credit that, we just forget about it.
That's correct. So if it's
Okay.
either over or under and it's within to that threshold of $1,
Right.
that we simply take care of that from an accounting standpoint, that there's no
But
money.
the
in it.
15, we do credit, okay.
From $1 to $15, we hold that money, and
Gotcha.
we either provide it to them if they request it, or we apply it as a credit to their next year's taxes.
That makes sense. Any other questions? All righty. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to discussion items. First up, 4.1 from Communications and Outreach, presentation of the 2021 Community Survey, and we're delighted to have Kasha Thompson with us for that presentation.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Every 2 years, we do a community survey in which we use a company to do a scientific survey of residents in Cabarrus County. This allows us to get a good read of what folks are thinking when they don't typically participate in our social media outreach, when they don't come to events that we have scheduled. This is a way to get their thoughts on how our services work. So this is a great investment the county makes. It helps us set strategic directions and know how we're doing with those directions. It'll help you with the budget process, and it helps give a voice to people who would not otherwise have a voice. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan with ETC Institute. I believe he's going to come to us virtually, and he's going to share our 2021 results. We were going to do this in 2020, but it got pushed due to COVID. So Ryan, are you there?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yep. All right, take it away.
Is everyone seeing my presentation on screen and live?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Keisha. Thanks for everyone for having us here virtually today. We've done a lot of these over the past year, and we really appreciate the county's flexibility and allow us to do this virtually for every reason that we're all completely aware of. For those of you who aren't familiar or weren't here when we performed the last survey, ETC Institute is really a national leader in market research, and we specialize in working with local government organizations such as Cabarrus County to perform market research studies, particularly satisfaction or community satisfaction or community perception surveys. We've done this nationwide for about the past 30 years or since 1982, so a little bit over 30 years, and we're happy to be here today and to continue our relationship with the county. The purpose of this survey, as well as many of our surveys, is to objectively assess satisfaction with the delivery of city services or county services. So the point here is to objectively collect that feedback, and we do that through methodology of our survey, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Beyond objective satisfaction assessment, we want to make sure that we're measuring trends from previous surveys. So part of the reason that the county continues to use ETC Institute is to ensure like methodologies across many survey years and to ensure those performance ranges are maintained and kept really nice and neat, and we have a really good idea of how the county's trended over the last few years. Beyond that, ETC Institute really prides ourselves in our benchmarking or performance range data. And so we're able to compare the county's data to performances of other communities to really put into perspective your ratings. And there's a few items that I'll kind of hit on and we'll discuss kind of how the ratings may appear low, but when you're talking relatively, the ratings are actually very good or actually above the national average. And lastly, we help determine priorities for the community through some specific design features of the survey. So there's a few questions that we've asked, and we've asked follow-ups of those questions in order to develop an important satisfaction analysis that we'll get to towards the end of the presentation. This is the 6th survey conducted for the county by ETC Institute. It's a 7-page survey, so a little bit lengthy. It really takes some investment by the respondent to make sure that they've answered all those questions, put it back in their postage paid return envelope and mail it back to us. County residents also had the option of completing the survey online. So we try to make it a little bit easier for folks to also complete it online. And about 7 to 10 days after folks receive those surveys in the mail, we do begin email follow-up. So we're emailing folks asking them to participate or follow up if they haven't yet participated. And so we randomly select the sample of all potential households within the county, excluding those RVs, as the previous discussion a couple of moments ago was just discussing. And each survey took approximately 15 to 20 minutes to complete. So like I said, it was the investment of the resident to make sure that they took the entire survey. It does take about 20 minutes. And we got about 420 responses. Our goal is about 400, and we always exceed that goal in Cabarrus County. It gives us a margin of error of about 5%. I'm going to round up from 4.8 to 5% for the purpose of presentation. And that's at the 95% level of confidence, which basically means if we were to have conducted this survey 100 times, 95 out of 100 times, we're going to get these same results, plus or minus our 4.8% margin of error. So the results are reliable within that plus or minus about 5%. Just keep that in mind as we kind of review these results. What we do beyond just collecting surveys and presenting results is that we take a deep dive into the Census Bureau information from the county. What we want to understand is the demographic, racial, ethnic, age, male, female breakdown of the county respondents or potential respondent pool. But beyond that, we want to ensure that all of the surveys aren't coming from your more densely populated areas. As you'll see, some of those dots are concentrated in what we know to be more densely populated areas, but there are dots from throughout the county, and each one of those dots represents a specific survey respondent. So each respondent to the survey, before their surveys were submitted and included in our final sample, were required to input their home address. We match that with the address selected for the random sample, and if they match, we understand that that online survey respondent was a part of that sample and their survey is included. The paper surveys that come back to us in our postage paid return envelopes actually have the respondent's home address printed on them, and they're printed on just a little bit white color, a little bit different, a heavier width of a paper. So we know that those surveys are in fact legitimate and came from a randomly selected respondent. So as you can see here, there's about 420 dots scattered among the county there. The bottom line up front. Bottom line is that things are going very well in the county, and they're continuing to go very well. In 2018, we saw some very high perception ratings, and we saw some very high benchmarks comparisons or some normative comparisons to other communities. In 2021, we saw actually an increase in a lot of these items. 92% of residents indicated they're satisfied with the county as a place to raise children, which is one of those #1 kind of grade card items that I use. And almost 90% of residents indicated they're satisfied with the overall quality of life in the county. So just overall, generally, folks are happy to live in the county and very satisfied with their quality of life and raising their children. One of those two of those most important aspects of kind of a general community's health. One of the best parts about this survey when I got the results back was that satisfaction is significantly higher in Cabarrus County than in other communities. And we had 21 areas that we were able to assess against our national average, and the county rated significantly above those national average numbers in all 21 areas that were assessed. Beyond that, a couple more of those grade card type satisfaction items was overall quality of services in the county as a place to live, both rating almost 20% above the U.S. average or 18% above the U.S. average. So just extremely good ratings this time around, a lot to be very happy about. Although there's a lot of good stuff in there, we did develop priorities for improvement. We'll discuss those, and I'll discuss kind of how those were created and maybe some options for how we can address or kind of conceptualize or perceive those particular ratings and how these priorities were developed. But the #1 priority is growth management. Second is availability of affordable housing options for all residents, which has been quite the the hot topic over the last couple of years. Affordable housing in all major communities or larger communities like Cabarrus County has been a hot topic. Open space preservation, and I know the county's taken some really dramatic steps to help, kind of go towards that preserving open space within the county, and crime prevention. Crime prevention is going to be one I'm going to kind of harp on because it's a really interesting reason why it became a top priority for improvement in 2021. So overall, as I've already kind of stated, perceptions are very positive in the county as it relates to county services and their experience of living in the county. These are your strategic priorities, and we asked residents just to rate their general satisfaction with these particular items. As you can see below, there's actually a 10-point scale or a 9-to-1 scale we asked respondents to rate all these items on. The items in blue are going to be those more satisfied responses, anything a 6 and above. Neutral is that 5 option, which means that folks just really, you didn't make a negative impression nor a positive impression, so folks are just generally okay with those particular items. And anything 4 or below is going to be kind of in a red or a pink color, and those are the areas where we saw the highest or the most dissatisfied responses, 4 to 1. Only one area or 2 areas really, the bottom 2 ones at the bottom of this list here, sustainable growth and development and transparent and accountable government, were the only 2 that really saw any really considerable dissatisfied ratings. But overall, the overall takeaway from this chart is that things are very positive. Folks are very satisfied with the current strategic priorities of the county. We asked respondents to list or to indicate their satisfaction with a litany of items that may influence their perception of quality of life. And again, these are a lot of the grade card items, a lot of these items that I go to first when I get a data set, just to understand kind of what I'm going to be looking at and what kind of data or responses I should be expecting. Based on this chart, I knew right away that I was going to be expecting some pretty high figures. And when we got to the benchmarking, that stuff really held true. So we really saw some really, really good ratings in 2021 from the county. And as we can see at the top of the list is the county is a place to raise children, the county is a place to live, the overall quality and image of the county, and then the county is a place to work and retire. The only one that didn't receive kind of those exceptional ratings, 77% or 78% and above, was the ease of travel in the county, but very few respondents still indicating that they're significantly dissatisfied with that particular aspect of quality of life in the county. More perception or influencers of perception, and these are more so related to safety and preparedness. Most folks feel extremely safe in their neighborhood during their day and at night. Most folks also believe that the community is prepared for public safety and emergency situations, which is fantastic. Most folks, again, feel safe at county parks and feel confident in the local response following a natural disaster. And actually, this entire chart just saw, really outstanding satisfied remarks. Everybody's pretty satisfied with the safety and preparedness of the county. So the county's doing a good job not only preparing and ensuring folks feel safe, but the perception of that has actually reached residents. And we know oftentimes, especially before COVID, our meeting halls weren't packed. The Board of Commissioners meetings weren't full of residents every time. So just the fact that folks feel so confident when we know that they're not always the most well-informed when it comes to actually researching and seeking out some of this type of information, it's really impressive that folks feel this way in the community. Again, items that influence perception of government administration. We're seeing a little bit more dissatisfaction here, but over the last few election cycles and some of the perceptions that we've seen nationally, we've seen a steep increase in dissatisfied responses anytime we begin to talk about government administration or elected officials or anything like that. We're seeing some upticks in dissatisfied responses across the board, communities across the country, but we're still seeing very high levels of very satisfied and satisfied remarks for almost all of these items on this list, which is just great. I want to bring up some of our GIS mapping. So beyond just plotting the points respondents responded from, we want to understand based on zip codes, are there any areas of the county that could maybe use a little bit more emphasis, or are there any situations in the county where we see ourselves needing to focus maybe on one particular geographic area over the other? So what we've done is we've aggregated the responses from each one of these areas that are outlined here to create mean ratings based on those response types that they gave. So this is the rating the overall quality of life in the county. As you remember, it was about 90% of folks that were satisfied with this particular item, so there's really no problem areas. even when taking the means of each one of these zip codes, we're still seeing blue across the board. And the same with rating the county as a place to live. We only have a little section in the north central part of the county that seems to be just a little bit less than very satisfied, but still very good overall satisfaction numbers. A lot of blue on these maps. Same with overall quality of county services, again, serving all areas of the county equitably, which is really important. I always get concerned in communities where I see any yellow or orange or red on this particular chart. It immediately tells me that there's going to be problem areas within those particular geographic areas specifically. Reading the county as a place to raise children, my #1 overall grade card. I know not everybody in the county has children, but I know a lot of folks nationwide have at least had children at one point in their lives, or maybe they're not living at home anymore or expect to have children eventually. Those folks' ratings really count. I think it says a lot about not only the current character or current climate of the county, but a lot about how folks see the county moving into the future. And this is a really good chart to look at here, a really good map. So when we get into priorities development, we used this particular question 1. Question 1 was kind of our litany of county services, satisfaction with aspects of living in the county. So there's a lot of different services or pseudo services, crime prevention up there at the top. That item received exceptionally high levels of satisfied responses from residents. The reason that it's been highlighted here with that red arrow is because it is one of the top priorities for improvement. It's one of those top 4 priorities in 2021. Keep in mind these numbers, these scores here, 77% of respondents indicated they're satisfied with the county's ability or crime prevention efforts. So folks are actually very satisfied with this particular item, and later on we'll discuss why it became such a high priority. Open space preservation down towards the bottom was one that received slightly lower levels of satisfied responses, along with a couple of our other top priorities, which is the availability of affordable housing and growth management, a couple areas that are very difficult for counties specifically to really overcome, considering some of their reach within their counties is limited by townships or cities or other municipality functions within the county itself. Did want to also provide maps for some of these problem areas. So I didn't want to just give you the good stuff up front, but I wanted to make sure that you all understood kind of where some of these problem areas may exist. And we noticed county-wide growth management is a major concern of respondents. And no dissatisfied or very dissatisfied remarks particularly, but everybody kind of aggregating back towards the mean when we break up responses by zip code. Same with availability of housing options for people with different income categories. A lot of yellow across the board with 2 zip codes showing blue. Open space preservation. We notice in a particular area of the county, this is maybe more important than in other areas of the county, really the west side there. And then crime prevention. Again, another satisfied response here from county-wide. It's just one of those items that's very important to residents. And as we move forward, we should just continue to keep that in mind, that we're doing very well in this area, but it's very important. We need to maintain our current level of emphasis on that particular service topic. So trends, as I mentioned at the top of my presentation, one of the things we always do is we compare trends. We compare both short-term trends from 2021 to 2018. As you'll see here, there's some notable increases and a few notable decreases. There were not very many notable decreases to reach from here. So there were just a few items, particularly library related items, access to technology. Those are really all library particular services right there. Notable increases, however, come in a lot of different categories, such as overall quality of life in the county, how easy customer service was to contact, the county as a place to work, overall image of the county, and down there at the bottom, I want to highlight crime prevention. So we've actually seen a notable increase in satisfaction over the last few years in that particular service area. When we go long-term trends, we're actually looking back to 2008, so we're actually going pretty far back here, and we're seeing some notable decreases and notable increases. These I don't focus on as much because I feel like the past is the past. There's nothing we can do about it now, but the notable increases are actually pretty interesting considering library operating hours are there. We've kind of ebbed and flow with a couple of these library items, but again, quality of life in the county has continued to increase. Open space preservation, one of our top priorities for improvement, has actually seen a dramatic increase since 2008. And as a place to work, there's a lot of good stuff here, and all the trends can be found in the full report. benchmarking. This is really kind of the meat and potatoes, is where we get into the meat and potatoes of our analysis and what we offer the county beyond just the statistically valid survey exercise. When I kept on harping on crime prevention and growth management, there's a couple of reasons why. Primarily because you rated significantly higher than the national average. And we know that all 21 areas that we were able to assess, you rated significantly higher in. But it's important just to emphasize that you're 5% above the US average when it comes to growth management. As you see there, 44% is the US average. We see ratings significantly lower than in some communities. So to see 49%, or almost half of your residents in the community, suggest that you're doing a good job at growth management really says a lot. And we're putting these results into perspective with these benchmarking charts by showing you the national average is far below that, especially given our margin of error here. Access to public transportation and bus services for a county-wide service, this is pretty phenomenal considering some of the counties rural, and we would expect there not to be public transportation or bus services in some of those areas based on our experience in large counties like Cabarrus County. And crime prevention, just really beating down the national average there. So there are a lot of communities that would really be interested in how you're ensuring residents, the perception of crime prevention is so high, almost 80%, almost 8 out of 10 residents feel that you're doing a really good job when it comes to crime prevention countywide. Other items that influence perceptions of quality of life, again, significantly above the national average. I won't go through all of these, but as you can see, those blue bars are just really swallowing up all of those yellow bars on this list, doing phenomenally well in all of the areas that were able to be assessed. Same with perceptions of safety, not quite the stretch on a couple of these, but if we look for local preparedness for public safety in emergency situations, that's why I brought that up earlier. Just what a phenomenal rating. Whoever is in charge of that at the county, including all communications folks, should really get a pat on the back. It's something that most of us probably don't realize, that our county's preparing for emergencies or public safety issues. The fact that so many residents feel confident in the county to be prepared for public safety and emergency situations is just really spectacular. Folks in the Cabarrus County, their ratings are really holding up across the board. So I'm happy with my quality of life. I'm happy to raise children here. Part of that is probably because 8 out of 10 respondents indicated that they feel like the county's prepared for public safety and emergency situations. So all of these ratings of perception really fold into one another and really play to one another. And this is just a phenomenal chart here for a couple of these items. Satisfaction with perceptions of government as administration. As I mentioned, these national average numbers have continued to drop over the years. We saw really not the same trend line here in Cabarrus County. So folks are really satisfied with the quality of services offered to them. The major one here is that value received for tax dollar users and fees. I can't tell you how many times we've seen that item become a high priority for improvement, and administrative staff and elected officials ask me, well, what can we do? You know, we have to tax our residents. And to see again, 62 may not, brighten your eyes or make you excited about the particular rating you received, but when compared to the national average of 44%, you can see just how well you're doing. The services you're providing to residents really feel as though they're getting a major bang for their buck by living in Cabarrus County. It's something really, you should be really, really proud that you're offering such a high level of service that almost 2 out of 3 respondents are indicating, hey, I'm pretty happy with the value I'm receiving for the taxes that I'm forced to pay. So that's just a phenomenal rating there. And level of public involvement at the very bottom in local decision making. That was another one where we had relatively low ratings. Some folks might say, well, 49% just can't be that good. The national average is only 38%. So you're 11 points above that national average, which again, significantly higher. We know at ETC Institute, folks are not as interested as they may say on a survey they are in being involved in local decision making, but it sure is impressive to see almost half of folks indicate that they're satisfied with the level of public involvement that is currently in local decision making within the county. So very impressive across the board when we're looking at all of our benchmarking. Same with emergency services, EMS, emergency management, and the sheriff's office. Sheriff's office is really just far and away above our national average, which is really impressive considering kind of the tough year that sheriff's offices across the country have had over the last year, especially just perceptions. It's not that their service has decreased, it's the perception of those folks and their role within the county as peacekeepers. So to see 9 out of 10 respondents indicate they're satisfied with the job the sheriff's office has done, again, folding back into some of our other ratings of crime prevention, feelings of safety in the community, the fact I want to raise my children here, the fact that we have an excellent quality of life in the county. These things all kind of play into one another, and the sheriff's office one is quite impressive. So congratulations to the sheriff and all of the deputies and all the administrative staff within the sheriff's department. Just very impressive here. So now that we've kind of gone through all the high notes, which most, I have to admit, I had a conversation with a few folks. Most everything in this report is pretty high note. Folks are very satisfied. There are some areas where there are improvement. There's room for improvement. As I've been mentioning this whole time, crime prevention is a top priority for improvement, not because the county's performing poorly in that area, but because it's really important to about 40% of your respondents. 40% of residents indicated out of all of these items that that's one of the top 3 items the county should continue to focus on. So we definitely need to continue to focus on crime prevention, growth management, open space preservation, and the availability of housing for people in different income categories. Some of these items are strictly perception. As we see in this next slide, some of these items received relatively high satisfaction ratings. When compared to the national average, we know that they're over 5% above the national average in all of these areas that were assessed. So really this is kind of a perceptions thing, letting folks know, hey, you know, maybe the county doesn't handle that particular aspect of growth management within your area, or maybe, hey, our hands are tied and it's up to your municipality to ensure that there's additional housing options for people in different income categories, and we as a county will do what we can to help push those municipalities in the right direction. I understand that open space preservation is really being handled. I think that it was 650 acres in Northeast Cabarrus County had just been purchased. That's probably part of the reason why the map shaded blue to our northeast and more yellow to the west. And then crime prevention, one of those items that's not necessarily a high priority. Usually the threshold is that 0.10 important satisfaction rating, but it's one of those areas that we want to continue to emphasize, and that's why I highlighted it in yellow along with open space preservation. 2 areas we should continue to emphasize. And since we have emphasized open space preservation, ensuring residents in the county are aware of what we've done, making sure they know that we've purchased that land and it's going to be saved for the future of the county. And just letting folks know what we're doing to respond to the survey results and our top priorities for improvement. It's sometimes not the actions, but the fact that we're letting folks know, hey, we're actually in action here. We're actually doing something to try to work this out, or we've implemented these policies over the last few years and give us time to help kind of some of these fall into place. And overall, most of these items are in green. Most of these items receive significantly higher than expected levels of satisfaction. And in fact, only 2 items, the items at the top of the category, received less than half of your respondents indicating they're satisfied. So, you know, the county overall has done a really great job. There's just a few areas we need to continue to work on between now and the next survey to ensure that they don't become even higher priorities in the future. This is just another way of looking at the previous chart. For some of the people that prefer more visuals over the tables, I'm more of a tables guy. So those of you that prefer this, kind of reading from the bottom right-hand corner, those are our opportunities for improvement. And then earning area in the top right is really continued emphasis. We're doing a good job in this area. We have higher than average levels of satisfaction, but these items are really important to folks. We need to continue to promote what we're doing and also acting on some of these items that definitely need to be repaired or fixed or anything like that in any of these categories in that top right-hand corner. Anything on the left side of this chart means that it's less important than the average importance that was given to all of these items. But some of these items in the bottom left-hand corner, although less important, did receive lower than average satisfaction ratings and should maybe be assessed between now and the next survey to ensure that we don't find those items becoming more and more important. What we find is that communities that ignore the items that are less important sometimes suffer in their satisfaction ratings in the next survey, and those items just barely cross the mean importance rating and wind up an opportunity for improvement. So we like to let our clients know that focusing on all these items, but making sure we're focusing on those items that are most important with the lowest levels of satisfaction is really going to do the most for the most residents in the community. Customer service. This was something that I wasn't going to bring this up in our presentation, but I started looking at some of these numbers and some of our national averages from across the country. And I went ahead and developed all these averages that we don't usually provide for most clients. But I wanted to provide these, and I wanted to give a kudos to every single public-facing employee or administrative staff or even elected officials within the county. These numbers are phenomenal. As you can see here, 30% above the national average for the accuracy in the assistance given. How easy they were to contact, how quickly they responded, and how well your issue was handled, which is really the hardest one of all, how well your issue was handled. There are countless times where you call a government organization and you ask for help. You say, hey, there's an issue in my community, here's what it is. And the person on the other line just has to say, well, I understand that there's an issue, but that might be somebody else's problem, or that might be your municipality. My hands are tied with red tape. I just can't act on this particular request or question, and I apologize. The fact that some of those phone calls are always going to result in a negative impact to the respondent or the folks that are actually calling the county employees, to see these types of ratings is just overly impressive. See there in the right-hand corner, it's about 12% or less. So 9 out of 10 respondents are either giving you a neutral or a satisfied rating to each one of these items from folks that have actually contacted the county. So everybody, like I said, that's public facing, anybody that's interacted with a resident of Cabarrus County over the last couple of years should really be applauded for these particular ratings. These are just phenomenal. As we can see, this is one of the charts with the largest levels of very satisfied or 9 and 8 responses throughout the entire report. So this is a very phenomenal chart that I just couldn't not include it. It's really, really impressive. The folks in the county are really, truly setting the standard for the delivery of customer service to your residents. And it's really important that you maintain that relationship. And I think given these ratings, there should be no reason they shouldn't be able to. I did want to show the trends for this particular item. So maybe you thought to yourself, this guy's just blowing wind. In 2018, these ratings were just as good. Well, they're not quite just as good. These ratings are actually significantly better than they were in 2018 and significantly better than they were in 2010 when we actually began asking this question. So these ratings are significantly better than they had been ever, and it really shows when we start actually aggregating our responses from other communities that administer similar surveys with the same questions. Communication. This is something that I always like to bring up. That's almost always a section on one of our community surveys. Some of these charts don't really have a lot of analysis, but they're just kind of informational. For example, awareness of opportunities for citizens to be involved. So as we noticed previously, I did mention the level of public involvement in local decision making. As we know, about half of folks indicated that they are aware of opportunities to participate in public meetings and public hearings. They know about news articles or information is probably being posted at the county's website. But, and then some of these other items, sorry, I hit my keyboard here. Interacting with the county social media accounts, about 2/3 of residents, or excuse me, 1/3 of residents are doing that, and then kind of trailing off at the bottom here. So most folks know how to, or at least half or more of your residents indicated they know how to be involved in decision-making for Cabarrus County government issues. About 1/3 of residents are aware of Cabarrus County Television, which is now the Spectrum Cable Channel 22, or YouTube, or cabarruscounty.us. So most folks are not necessarily aware of Cabarrus County Television. And we know from most communities, even though awareness might be high, usage remains relatively low. And I think in looking at just a few other county governments across the country, the awareness numbers that you all have are very comparable to actual usage numbers of other communities. And when asking residents, do they rely on the Cabarrus County website, social media, e-newsletters, or these other informational sources for information about Cabarrus County? Only about 41% said occasionally, 35% said never, and then we had a few other respondents indicating, they'll check or rely on that information when an emergency affects their area or when hot topics are discussed, and only 8% of respondents regularly or on a regular basis rely on those particular communication sources as mentioned above. In the last year, we asked respondents if they've acted on news and information they received from the county website, social media, e-newsletter, or the TV station. 42% said they'd taken no action, and 40% said they'd shared information with their friends or neighbors, but significantly fewer folks indicated they really took any significant action. That'd be performing additional research, sharing, or registering or applying for a service or sharing an event. So most folks actually are acting on this information, but I guarantee if we were to stop posting information, we would hear an uproar of the community of these folks that indicated they do rely on it occasionally when it isn't there. So again, it's not that we should be taking away from these services, but just keeping in mind, not everybody is actually seeking out this information through these official means of communication, which is very common in every community. The best part about this is that even though folks aren't necessarily using all of our means of communication as much as we maybe like, over 70 or almost 70% of respondents indicated they strongly agree that they trust the information received. And that's really important to understand. Only 14% of respondents indicated they disagreed to that particular question, and 17% of folks gave a 3 or a neutral response. So a vast majority of our residents may not act on the information, but they know that they can trust it, and that's really important. We asked respondents to indicate, are they aware of the Cabarrus County's website, cabarruscounty.us. We've seen kind of a decline since 16 in folks that have actually been aware of the website. When it comes to local awareness of a website, it's likely because of the overtaking of social media since 2016 is kind of a primary means of knowing information or obtaining information about our local governments. It's probably really usurped the usage of the website. Most folks are probably first getting information on social media and then secondary doing research. We know it's not a lot of folks doing additional research or secondary research, but those folks probably know about the website, but it's significantly fewer than others. And I know that the county went to primarily all online services over the last year, so these numbers are just a little bit surprising for me. We also asked respondents not only were you aware of the website, but how frequently do you use it? Only 2% said daily, 5% said weekly. I'm sure you know some of those folks in that 7% range there. And then fewer folks said monthly, with 82% saying infrequently or as needed, likely to get official business done or to look up something they're actually interested in trying to find information for. In summary, residents have a positive perception of the county. Everybody should be very proud of these results. These are phenomenal results. Satisfaction is much higher in your county than it is in other communities. Those benchmarking numbers are just very impressive. When you read through the full report, or if you haven't already, definitely pay attention to the benchmarking. It's a really interesting part of this process. A lot of those ratings that you all might think are low or should be higher, or, hey, 49% just doesn't seem exceptional or like we're doing a great job. When we put that into perspective, we really see how well the county really is doing, just countywide, and that's really impressive. And again, we discussed these and we had some maps and we discussed some items that may help impact some of these, or how we should review all of our priorities for improvement. But really the top two are growth management and the availability of affordable housing options for all residents, which really go hand in hand in a lot of communities. Then open space preservation, which we know we're combating right now with that 650 acres that we've purchased, and crime prevention, where we know that we're well above the national average, and it's just really important to our residents to ensure that they know we're continuing to invest in that service. And with that, I'll take any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen and get my face back up here, and we'll take any questions that everybody might have.
Okay, questions for Ryan?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for Ryan. Ryan, this is Lynn. Thanks for the report. On one of the first slides you did, I think it was the very first slide you had, talking about the county government and transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back to that slide, or Laura, whoever's doing that?
Yeah, that's me. So forgive me here if I'm.
Well, no, that's fine. That sort of caught my eye, because one of the goals of this commission has been to make things that we do as open and as transparent as we can. And when I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that, according to this survey, 26%, is that what it says? 26%, feel like that we're not being as transparent and accountable. But now, is that typical for county government to see that, or is it, I'm just, really curious about that.
Yeah, that is significantly more typical than you would maybe assume that it would be. Some of this is not that you're not being transparent, it's that folks want to assume that you're not being transparent, or that things are being done behind closed doors. And when we've done focus groups or done additional comments on questions like this, we find that it's not so much that folks have proof that the county's not being transparent, but it's the perception that things are going on behind closed doors, and that's what you're not being transparent about. As we noticed in the benchmarking, we are actually above by 11% the national average, which may not say a lot, but when we go to some of our communication methods, we know that folks are aware of public meetings and public hearings, but how many folks are really attending? We know that folks know about the Cabarrus County.us live streams and the YouTube and the Channel 22, but how many folks are truly tuning in to understand what decisions are being made in public? So it's really something that, and I think that it's great that somebody took note of that and wants to ensure that these numbers change and we see more blue next time we do the survey. But there's always going to be some segment of our population who, regardless of how transparent the county really is, 1, doesn't seek out the information, 2, doesn't attend public meetings, and 3, has the perception that the county's doing something behind their back without their knowledge. And unfortunately, that's a perception issue that we combat all the time in communities. And through our additional research, we've really determined that there's always going to be a segment of the population who's not satisfied with the particular option, no matter how transparent the county really is in their decision-making processes. And it's unfortunate, but it's something that we think that benchmark can help contextualize and put into perspective for folks. And we hope that the benchmarking has done that, considering you're 11 percentage points above the national average in that particular item.
I agree with everything you said, Ryan. And I know when I started public service many years ago, I felt like you go into public service thinking that you're going to try to do everything and help everybody you can. But I've learned over the years, though, after right at 20 years of public service, if you can get 50-50, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
So if we're 11 points over the, the national average, that's pretty good. But we still try hard, though, with our outreach and communication department, with, all the things that we try to do to make sure that the public, does see what's going on behind the closed doors. Yeah. And that the government here locally, at least, is accountable. Yeah. And we want our citizens to participate and be a part of the meetings if they can. And we realize that probably in these numbers, social media has probably had something to do with this, because people hear, what they see, and believe what they see on social media without even looking into it to find out what the validity of it is. But anyway, overall, it's an excellent report, and I appreciate you doing the survey and getting it back to us as promptly as you did.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for Ryan? For the benefit of the public, I think if I'm reading, we have 283 pages of information. He told us a lot, but there are a lot of additional items available. Of course, that is on our website.
It will be. These are hot off the presses. They just wrapped up the research last week, but as he mentioned, it was 7 pages long. So the investment the community made in taking the survey, our county manager's office received phone calls from people who were excited and wanted to make sure it was going to count and that we would promote the results. So we will be doing that. And we will also this year have a dashboard that ETC Institute is putting together. So we'll be able to see the results in a new way and hopefully use that to better move our services forward. Yeah. And also thank you to staff for their exceptional performance in the report.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing up the dashboard. We'll have that ready in a couple of weeks. And what I typically do with clients who are new to our dashboards is I like to first work with my contact, which is Keisha, and we'll work together to make sure she fully understands it. But then I'm happy to set up a few additional training sessions with other staff members or department heads to ensure that everybody can fully utilize that dashboard. That dashboard, because we've been doing surveys so long, is going to have all of your survey results, or as much as we can fit, as well as maps with trending and trend charts and performance ranges and all sorts of different unique tools that will help folks really utilize this result instead of filtering through those almost 300 pages of results.
Chairman Morris, I do not have a question, but I would just like to take a moment and commend the staff on the excellent report that came back from them. We know that internally because we get a chance to deal with them every day, but it's nice to know that the public has chimed in and said the same thing. So just because I know that doesn't happen, and sometimes I feel like you guys are in a no-win situation because you're following the rules, and that's not what people want to hear. But it's nice to know that even when you do that, they're still commending you for the job that you do. So congratulations and thank you.
And I certainly echo that. You know, when you look at the customer service ratings, it's pretty amazing. You know, and just because I happen to be looking straight at one of our EMS people there that had a 94% satisfaction rating, which the other departments certainly fall in that same category, that's pretty amazing. And thank you all very much. Any other questions or comments?
Just a
Commissioner
quick
Collier.
comment. As you brought up, the affordable housing versus open space, or those two items showing up, you know, it's interesting that those are two competing ideas, or not ideas, but, you know, if you set aside enough open space and you don't have anywhere to build houses, guess what? Prices go up. So it's incumbent upon us to sort of navigate the middle ground there, which I think we do, and based on the survey's results, we do that, but that's just incumbent upon us to continue to do that, because that is something that's important to a lot of people, and it may not, there may be some people that don't realize that those are part and parcel, will go hand to hand together, and they certainly do. I mean, it's just basic economics, but I certainly am glad we've got a great presentation coming up on some space that we have purchased to set aside, and then we will continue to work with the municipalities on the housing piece. I think that probably maybe falls a little more into their purview, but those two items, they're definitely hot button items, no doubt. So anyway, thank you for all the information. This is a lot to take in, but again, I'd like to echo what Commissioner Honeycutt said. It's just a real, it's amazing the work that gets done in this building, and with the way you guys touch the people that live here and pay the bills. It really is, and our hats are off to you. You make us look good, so, you know, that's always a good thing, right? So, thank you.
Yeah, and you know, you talked about, you know, affordable housing for one. That's something that we hear a lot about that I really think is an important issue for people in the county. It's reassuring to hear this feedback, to say, well, yes, we did interpret that correctly, or we are on the right track, or so it is really, really helpful information for us doing our jobs. And so we thank you all for the effort, and certainly thank the people that took the time to fill out the survey. I mean, that's valuable for sure. Anything else, Kasha?
I just wanted to add, this was the first opportunity we had to align this with your strategic plan, so you'll see that moving forward. But we changed around some of the questions to reflect those priorities you had outlined.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be talking about this many more times over the coming years,
Thank you.
coming months. Okay. We move now to item 4.2 from elections, ADA voting equipment. We're happy to have Carol Soules with us to talk about that.
Good evening. And there is no action required at this point. This is just a preliminary recommendation from our board to purchase the new ADA equipment. Is replacing what we have now. It's smaller, same company. We're also upgrading our elections night software which will go with the equipment we already have, and there's no charge for that upgrade because it is an upgrade for our existing Unity election night software. And we've had a CIP in place for a few years for this. This is the equipment, I believe last month when I was here, we talked about, we're going to use it primarily for our ADA. There will be one per precinct, and you can use the sip and puff. It has that capability, but also I know Mecklenburg County is using this equipment as their voting equipment. It's small enough to be carried out to curbside, but it does not use the regular standard ballot that we use, and that's what we wanted to stick with, paper ballots. So this, you put in a smaller piece of paper. It's a ballot marking device where the person, they can zoom in, they can change the contrast so that they can see it better. They can have the selections read to them, and it just marks the ballot for them. Then it prints it out, then they take it and put it into the tabulator with our other paper ballots.
Great. Any questions for Carol?
So hopefully next month I'll be before you with the final recommendation. We have a simulated election scheduled for May 12th, which is, we have a state process in order to replace any equipment, and we have to do a simulated election. So the people we're purchasing from are coming in, we're going to do it in half a day, 20 precincts, using this equipment to make sure that everything goes well.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
keeping us up to date. Okay, we move now to item 4.3 from Infrastructure and Asset Management, Cabarrus County Emergency Medical Services Headquarters Project Update. And Mr. Billifer will be back with us for that.
I'm also going to have Mr. Lentz and Mr. Brines come up. They're actually going to pass out some of the interior materials color boards that we've come up with, the design team and staff have come up with. Before you start gazing upon those and kind of falling in love with the interior design, I did want to kind of just give some current progress on the EMS headquarters. We have a construction materials testing company that is under contract currently, GMP1, which is the site package, which is very similar to how we did the courthouse project. That'll be coming up to the board in July. We're actually already had some of the, actually all of the pre-qualifier bid meetings for that. So that's going to be all the site work. We have met with Rodney, and we've decided that we're going to do a GMP 1.5 for the steel package based on what's going on in the market right now. I don't see that we have an option unless something changes drastically in the next 2 months. We need to move forward with that. We look to mobilize on the site in late June or early July, and I've already made the dealership that we have a lease agreement with across the street, I've already made them aware of that. In terms of the actual design process, we are through the bulk of the DD phase, the actual nuts and bolts design phase. We have taken our comments from the Department of Insurance and made about 7 adjustments based on what they've said. And we have a meeting with our local jurisdiction, construction standards, later this week. And my team and myself from Infrastructure and Asset Management have spent a lot of time on everything from generators to the types of chillers to the types of lighting, going through all of that. So I kind of feel like we're right on the cusp of going into C and D phases, hence why they're mobilizing and getting that all bid out. And now these guys will go ahead and they'll go to one side and kind of pass them out, and you can kind of pass them around if you'd like, or it's a little bit more difficult with COVID. They're pretty heavy. It does have a very much underlying color structure through. We did not put a lot of red. There is one highlight of red that goes through one of the carpets. It's very muted. Obviously, we didn't want to put a lot of that. I'm sorry, sir. Okay. Oh, yeah. So we have that one highlight red. Everything else is muted grays and blues. Yes.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
I'm engaged.
Yeah. So we tried to go with a lot of calming colors. We also went high resilience. Any public safety, whether it's our fire services or our sheriff's department or EMS, The boots and the belts and the bags do a lot of damage to our walls and to our baseboards. So we spent a lot of time going through a lot of evaluation of what type of materials we were going to use. So this is one of the few meetings that we did have in person, and it was not easy to get it all in this room and figure it all out, but we probably went through 4 to 5 selections of everything that you're seeing to whittle it down to 2, and then have somebody whittle it down to 1. So that's kind of how it went through. So I don't know if these will be in my office if any of you want to look closer at them, but one of the deliverables when I first met with you was to bring you kind of the idea of the exterior, which you've all seen and kind of addressed, and I think felt very happy with, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to see the inside.
Is there a camera you can hold? Can Lynn see those? I don't know. What
Oh, yeah, right in front.
Can you see that, Lynn?
Not yet. I can see them now. Is there any particular reason why you're staying away from red, Kyle? I'm just curious.
We tend not to do that type of red. Studies show that when you do that for folks that live with high stress and anxiety, it's probably not the best idea to do it. You're starting to see it be removed from some of their locations, although I say that we recently saw a fire station that was done like that. But when we met with the team, they very much wanted to stick with the blues. And that blue is not the exact logo blue, the Cabarrus County logo. We did that in the courthouse. We did that blue. We could not find a way to match it in with all the tile, but it does speak pretty strongly to that blue. So that was one of the thought processes.
Okay, well, I guess that's why fire trucks is red. They do, when you see one, it does create a little
Yeah.
sense of stress. So I understand that.
Any other questions about any of the updates on the EMS headquarters?
No, and I will refrain from making any comparisons between North Carolina State red and Carolina blue. Any other questions for Kyle on that project? If not, we'll move to item 4.4, which is courthouse expansion project update.
Okay, kind of following the same gist that we did for the EMS headquarters, and I do come up in front of you every couple of months and give you one. And you can go right to the pictures, Lauren, if you want. That's a look from your basement level, so that'll be where your parking deck is. You can keep on scrolling through, Lauren. That shows your steel going up. So as of today, which that picture is not today, as of today, we have about 50% of the steel that'll be going up. You can scroll down, Lauren. That shows your site work being done on Union. So that is actually, that's in front of the courthouse and in front of the historic courthouse now. And that is going to be the bulk of that utility work is stormwater. So that's pre of the streetscaping project, which is why we're trying to get ahead of it so quickly. If you can scroll down one more, Lauren. That's a view looking down Church Street at the Sheriff's Administration Department. That shows you your levels of steel going up. One more, Lauren. That is the most recent aerial. That just came in actually the other day. That was a late submission to Lauren to put on there. So that's showing your 2 levels of your steel. And actually, it's funny, today, the surveying company had to access our roof of the Sheriff's Department to shoot a control point for the next levels, which anything about construction surveying, that's the first time I've ever had to let somebody on a roof to get that. Usually that's down the ground level. So that's first time, and everything seems to be going very well. Obviously, I was up earlier asking for an owner's contingency, so you do realize as we move along with all this design and construction and find all the utilities and the difference in elevations and things like that, that's what that comes about and all of this stuff. But I think what you'll see is by the end of July, all the steel will be up, and you'll start to see the mock-ups of the facade come up. In fact, in the next 3 weeks, we should have a smaller scale mock-up of the facades coming together. So we've chosen the brick, the panels, the different bronze, aluminum, the glass, the glazing, all of that's been laid out of 50 selections, you wear it down to 20, and then you bring in the design team and get it down there, so that'll all be laid up in a mock-up board. That's the bulk of the updates for that project.
How long will the obstructions on Union Street last, the stormwater?
This version or all of them? They'll be throughout, I would say with this one, we have another 6 to 7 weeks with this one that's in there. And then again, keep in mind when GMP3 happens, meaning when the 1975 courthouse is renovated, both Corbin and Union will that same type of lane closure will be there for a long time, because to access that building with how they have to change that facade, they'll physically have to have that equipment in those lanes of that road.
Right. Okay, other questions for Kyle?
Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we are happy next to have item 4.5, our innovation report from Debbie Brannon, who's with us virtually as well. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May Innovation Report. As always, I'll start off with our Employee Digital Book Club. This month, we will be reading It Worked for Me, and it's filled with vivid experiences and lessons learned that have shaped the legendary public service career of a 4-star general and former Secretary of State Colin Powell. Colin combines the insights he gained serving in the top ranks of the military and in 4 presidential administrations with the lessons he learned from his immigrant family upbringing in the Bronx, his training in the ROTC, and his growth as an Army officer. The result is a powerful portrait of a leader who is reflective, self-effacing, and grateful for the contributions of everyone he works with. So I hope you'll join me with this book. I think it's going to be quite interesting. I've already taken a little preview of it, and I look forward to discussing it on our digital book club. I can't believe it's been 2 years, but in May of 2019, I gave my first innovation report and introduced you to the goals of Cabarrus County's innovation initiative. The primary goal of that initiative was to create the culture of innovation by educating and empowering our staff. The first part of today's innovation report is about a year-long educational program that we're going to be participating in to build a framework for innovation. And after that, Kevin Thomas from IT is going to provide an overview of technology and innovation from our physical security projects. Today, we have Josh Soren, Program Director of the Government of Innovation at the Center for Public Impact, to introduce you to the concepts of how to fail forward in the public sector. Josh, I will stop sharing my screen and let you introduce yourself.
All right, thanks so much, Debbie, and thanks so much to all of you. I know y'all have been at it for a couple hours now, so I'm gonna try and keep my remarks pretty brief, give you an overview of this program, and then I'd be happy to take any questions that you all have. So just real quickly about me, my name is Josh Soren. I lead CP, the Center for Public Impact's Government Innovation Team in North America. The Center for Public Impact, if you've never heard of us, we are a global nonprofit. We're headquartered in London, and we were founded by the Boston Consulting Group about 5 years ago now. And our mission broadly is to reimagine government. And if I had to boil down, what my team is focused on, it's really working with local governments to build the capabilities and cultures that can allow them to solve really big problems. And we do that in a variety of ways. So, we publish our own research, but most of our work, I would say, is actually working on the ground with local governments directly. So over the last 2.5 years since I've gotten started, or almost 3 years really, we've worked with, at this point, nearly 90 governments on a variety of different programs. So all of it is geared towards building capabilities and cultures of innovation. And this work that I'm about to speak about is squarely fits within that. Let me give you a little bit of context about what this program is, how we came to it, and what we're hoping to do. When we work with governments or we're talking to governments, which we're doing pretty frequently, there's really not many that would say they don't want to develop, become more innovative or become less risk averse. And I think most of the time when governments want to do that, they focus on skill building or new technologies, things like that. And that stuff is really important. Our team does a lot of work building capabilities, right? And specifically in things like human-centered design, data and analytics. So we work with a lot of governments on that. I think what we've seen over the last few years is that without a culture of innovation actually to support that work, it's really hard for innovation to stick or be effective over the long term. So the question then is what is kind of the key determinant in a culture of innovation? And to us, the key determinant is a culture that supports and has capabilities and nurtures that capability to learn, specifically what we would say learning about failure. And the reason for that is because if you think about any innovation, whether it's your really basic process improvement or a really complex experiment or pilot that the county is running, it always starts with identifying that something isn't working, a failure, and then engaging in a process of trial and error experimentation to get to a solution that actually works. So regardless of the complexity of the innovation, it always starts with a failure. It always starts with learning about identifying a failure, learning from it, and then engaging in a continuous learning process and iterating over time. But I don't have to tell all of you that learning from failure, in our private lives is difficult, right? Learning from failure in the private sector is also hard. It's something that's kind of highly touted. Learning from failure in the public sector is kind of a unique and different beast entirely, and that's something that we're well aware of. So over a year ago, almost 2 years ago now, we partnered with the Aspen Institute to engage in a year-long research process where we basically try to answer two questions. Why is it so hard to learn from failure in the public sector, and what can public servants do about it? And to inform that research, we did standard kind of literature review, subject matter expert interviews, stuff like that. But actually the bulk of our work was actually working with 6 local governments directly over the course of several months, where we asked them, through workshops and different interviews, we asked them what were the main barriers that they faced to failing forward or learning from failure. And what could they do about it? And then they developed action plans to overcome it. And really that kind of on the ground work informed the research, which led to a report which we released in September of last year that spells out kind of our findings of how local governments can really become better learning organizations that support innovation, specifically the ability to learn from failure. Building off of that, we want to, now that we knew what we were talking about, we want to take this work to more and more governments because we saw how impactful it was. So we partnered with the National Association of County Administrators to develop this program where that's all focused on building cultures and capabilities of innovation that are focused on learning from failure. And I'll tell you a bit more about that program. So we're lucky that Cabarrus wants to participate in this program, and they're going to be one of 5 counties that are going to be participating. And there's really kind of 2 parts of the program. First is what we would call executive master classes. And so one of the key things that we saw in our research when we were doing this is that you can do all of the different action plans and things that you want to try and build a culture that supports learning. But if you don't actually have leadership buy-in, whether at the department or agency director level or at the county executive level, administrator, county manager, it doesn't really matter. It's hard for anything else to happen. And we get that question all the time from people of, I really believe in this stuff. I'm a middle manager. I believe in this stuff, but my boss doesn't. What can I do? And it's a really tough question to answer because there's not a lot. Like culture does flow from the top, and that was a key research finding that we found in the report that we published. So the executive master classes are really geared specifically towards leaders. So this will be a series of quarterly webinars attended by county executives as well as department and agency directors only. So just the leaders of the different participating counties, where they're going to hear over the course of 4 quarterly webinars subject matter experts on specific topics that we think our leaders are kind of uniquely positioned, the roles leaders are uniquely positioned to play to kind of steward this culture of innovation. So this will be an opportunity for them to hear directly from subject matter experts and also form a cohort and almost like a community of practice between leaders in the participating counties. The second part of the program, though, so if you think about like the executive masterclass is kind of your top-down approach, the second part of the program, which we're calling departmental workshops, is your bottom-up approach. And so this is where we're bringing 5 counties that we've recruited for this program. Each county we're asking can submit 3 departments and about up to 10 people per department to participate. And each of those departments is going to participate in a series of workshops over the course of the year, facilitated by our team, where they're going to systematically observe and identify what are the barriers within their organization, within their teams to learning from failure. And they're going to develop action plans and then implement those and iterate on them over the course of the year. And so they're going to participate in a series of workshops. There's going to be some instructional webinars, things like that, that they'll participate throughout the program. And we really expect kind of two main things to happen. First, on the culture building side, this is a long-term outcome, but we do think that building this culture of innovation can improve the team's ability to identify and solve problems for residents. 2, can increase the organizational agility and resilience. This is something that we saw during the COVID pandemic. Organizations that were able to innovate fared much better than the ones that were caught flat-footed and couldn't move. We do think it will improve team cohesion and overall will improve kind of what we would call the psychological safety of the team. So that's the culture side. The other benefit we think is capability building. So specifically in the areas of systems thinking, so how to build a healthy system within their team and viewing kind of government as the complex system that it is. How do you do that well? Again, core part of here is about failing forward, right? So how do you identify and how do you build the capabilities to identify things that aren't going well and actually put them forth and start to solve them as a team? Human-centered design and continuous improvement is going to be a big part of this program. It's kind of core to everything that we do at CPI. And then finally, data and measurement, but specifically how to use data and measurement to learn instead of, to penalize people and kind of drive accountability. Those are the 2 parts of the program. Again, your executive master classes and your departmental workshops. We think kind of taking that top-down and bottom-up approach is going to yield some really great results, and we're excited to be working with the counties that are participating in this. Again, 5 counties, Cabarrus is one of them, and each county is going to bring 3 departments that are going to participate in this program. One thing I would just throw out there, because it's a question that we get often, failure, I think when we talk about it in government, is kind of a bit of a scary word. People tend to shy away from it. And so I think it's really important to be clear about what we are saying and what we're not saying. What we're definitely not saying is that government needs to go out and fail more, waste taxpayer money, take all sorts of kind of risks, things like that. That's not what we're saying here at all. What we are saying is that government is a complex system and that whether you like it or not, things are going wrong all the time. That's just the nature of operating in the complex system that government is. And so if you take that as a given, the question is, what are you going to do about it, right? Are you going to identify it, acknowledge it, do something about it, or are you going to sweep it under the rug? And this program is really geared towards identifying and acknowledging the things that are not going well right now, and then building the continuous learning mindset to actually continuously identify and address those things over time, which we think is the best way to operate. We think most governments are moving towards this learning mindset, and we think it ultimately yields better results for the people that you're trying to serve, which of course is the mission that you're trying to achieve within your county. So I'll pause there. I know that was a super quick overview, but again, I know y'all have been at this for a couple hours, so I wanted to keep it brief. But I would encourage any questions that you have either right now or if you want to email me afterwards, I'm happy to answer them. So any questions about CPI, who I am, the program, anything like that, happy to field those now if there's time for it.
Questions for Josh, commissioners? It's, thank you for that presentation. It's an exciting opportunity, and so happy that Cabarrus County is able to participate.
Thank you, Josh. I will say that we already have several departments that are excited about participating. So we're kind of vetting through those. We have more than 3, so we need to vet which departments will be participating in. Creating a culture of innovation is a long-term proposition. We've really been focusing on it for 2 years, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to focus more on innovation and creating that culture of innovation this year. So thank you, Josh, and I will be in touch.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now we have Kevin Thomas, who's going to give us a presentation on the innovation and technology we're using in our physical security and AV world now. Kevin, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Alrighty. How's everyone doing tonight? Good. Well, my name's Kevin Thomas. I'm a systems administrator here with Cabarrus County IT. Today I'm here to talk to you about our physical security programs that we've been working on since I've been here, and some of the improvements in our AV that we've made, which is audiovisual. So just a little introduction on me. I started with the county on September 8th of 2014. I've worked on 3 separate teams. While in the IT department, I started out on the help desk as a help desk technician. I was promoted to a technical specialist on our TAS team, and now I'm currently a systems administrator on our NACS team, which is our networking team. Through all 3 of those positions, I focused heavily on physical security and audiovisual. For our physical security systems, right now we have 3 major components of it. We have our door access control system, which is composed of our card readers, door strikes, which is what that top picture is. That's an electric door strike, and magnetic locks, which is the picture on the bottom there. That's a magnet lock. Also, our photo IDs and access cards. The reason we use door access controls is just that it's so much easier to manage, and it's safer than handing out keys to everyone. Next, we have our security camera system. That provides video evidence for us if we have an incident that we need to pull footage from, and also over in the jail, they live monitor 24/7, which is my next point, the jail security system. For our door access control system, when I first started here, we had 2 separate systems, one for the general government system, or for the general government buildings, and then one for the sheriff's office. So if we had somebody in IT or somebody who had access to both buildings, we'd have to put them in one system and then take the time and put them in the other system as well. Now we're currently have one unified county-wide system for both buildings. Currently, we manage 325 doors and card readers throughout the county across 16 sites. And two or three years ago, we created a new county photo ID, which is what we're currently using for the sheriff's office and for our general government staff. Some of the new locations we've added card readers in has been the Harrisburg Library, Co-op, Veterans, the new IAM Ops Center, and we've had various additional doors that we've added to some of our pre-existing locations throughout the county. We've made some policy updates. I know some people may have had some issues with their badge lately. If you haven't used your badge in 90 days on a reader, it will automatically deactivate your card. So we just do that just because if we haven't seen a door swipe in 90 days, we don't know if the card's lost or what's happened to it. So we just have it automatically deactivate. But the good thing about it is we can quickly turn it back on. It's I can do it from anywhere that I can get on a VPN access into my computer and turn it right back on. So next we have our security cameras. Our video management system, when I first started here, we had several different DVRs throughout the county. One of the issues we had is that the times were off on most of them by a couple of minutes. So if there's an incident that happened, you'd have to figure out what the time difference was, and it was just a real pain to try to pull off video if you had several systems in which you were pulling off the video from. Now we have one enterprise-wide system. All the times are synced now, so it's really easy to pull off the camera footage that we need. We currently manage 955 active camera streams throughout the county. One of the new camera types that came along since I've been here are the quad cameras. Those are 4 camera lenses and 1 enclosure. They provide a 360-degree view. And it makes setting up camera locations much easier than trying to use a single camera. It also helps on licensing cost as well, because you use one license, but you get 4 cameras for the price of one license. Some of our locations that we've added cameras to or upgraded the current camera system has been the jail, the Human Services Building, the Government Center, interior and exterior, basically all of our libraries, the Concord Senior Center, our parking deck was a big one. And then next we have our jail security system. This was upgraded in 2018. It uses our video management system and door access control system. The good thing about it, the current system, is that now we have the ability to manage it and maintenance it in-house for the vast majority of our issues that we have. We replaced all the PCs, monitors, and back-end hardware for intercoms and cameras as well. And we're currently in the process of replacing the older cameras to high-definition cameras. Some of our security system usage events that we've had was the courthouse basement fire that we had a few years ago. We have various law enforcement requests that come in throughout the year, and various jail incidents, and plus, like I said, this system is used 24/7 by our jail staff to monitor inmates. We used it during the tornado warning last year just to make sure people were in the hallways and in the safe areas during the incident. We have a couple of parking deck vandalism incidents that we've used it on, and as you can see from the picture, we currently have a camera. That's actually this camera right here on the corner that we're using for a time lapse and a general surveillance camera. So we're getting multi-use out of that camera. Some of our audio-visual improvements have been that we're currently in the process of replacing older projectors with large screen TVs, just so we don't have to worry about replacing lamps in the projectors. We've created several video conference rooms by adding webcams and PCs to the back of TVs, just so during the COVID age that we've been in, it's definitely helped out to have a lot of video conference rooms available. When COVID first started here, we jumped on creating virtual greeter stations that are still in use through several of our departments. Another big thing that we've done was work with Judge McGee across the street at the courthouse and set up virtual courtrooms using Microsoft Teams. Now they use that daily, and he said we were one of the first courthouses in North Carolina to successfully have a virtual trial. We also added additional attorney-client video visitation stations in our courthouse and the sheriff's office, just so that inmates could communicate with their lawyers more frequently. We also set up, we set up the tightrope system, which is what we're using now to broadcast live, and set up the live stream. So what's next? We've been looking into using mobile credentials for door access, which is using your phone or Apple Wallet on your phone to access the card readers to get in to doors. We'd also like to start having security site surveys at all of our locations, and that's just to determine our current security level and make improvements on issues that we may or may not find. Video analytics, we've been doing some research into this just to make our camera system more proactive instead of reactive. That way, for instance, now the camera AI has gotten so good that it can tell the difference between a holstered and unholstered weapon. Because here, getting a notification about a holstered weapon, we have deputies walking around, so we don't want to email alert every time it sees a deputy. But if the weapon comes out of the holster, we would like to know about it as soon as it happens. There's also suspicious package and bag detection, and greatly improved video search. So now if we say, there's a suspicious red car that goes by at a certain time, we can tell the video analytics to find a red vehicle during this time frame on this camera, and it only pops up the frames that have the red vehicle in it. So it makes the video search much easier. And then obviously, I think we all know about the new courthouse that's coming. That's going to be 250 plus additional cameras, 400 plus active streams, including the quad cameras, and 300 plus additional card readers for us to manage. And obviously, like I said earlier, we're replacing the gel cameras with HD cameras, and we're looking into getting a key management system for the physical keys that we do have, just so we can easier manage those and tell who's the last person to check them out and things like that. And then the most important slide is thank you. It's nice having a board of commissioners who care a lot about physical security, and just everybody on my team, from the networking team, Ryan, Jason, Josh, Travis. I'm not going to list everybody because I know we've been here for a while, but just everybody down in IT, our management, Todd and Debbie and Jason, they've been incredibly supportive of me over my time here, and couldn't ask for a better team to work with. And Kyle's guys in IAM, I know I bug them weekly, and they've always been a pleasure to work with. So can't say enough good things about these guys here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I know when I went over this presentation with Kevin, I was shocked to know how many cameras and door access controls that we have, and the number that will be coming in the future with our new buildings. So I think Kevin and his team have that under control and are always innovating. So we look forward to see what comes next. Thanks, Kevin.
Great. Thank you. Well, we certainly, that's a lot to keep up with, and we also know that commissioners are not immune to the system, because Commissioner Kiger has been locked out of the door access. So.
And I think it works now, and so I will be getting my mail. You'll be happy to.
Okay. Great. Is that all, Debbie?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate that report. Okay, we move now to item 4.6, presentation of St. Stephen's Park report. And Jonathan's going to lead us in that.
Jonathan is going to make some introductory comments, and then I'm going to turn it over to the MPA class with UNC Charlotte. You're all aware of how much we benefit by the fact that we have such a prestigious institution like UNC Charlotte near us in just so many ways, but specifically with the MPA class, there's a lot of interaction, particularly with our county manager and with other staff that we have that are both graduates of the program and not graduates of the program. But we have benefited from their work, and in turn, it allows some of our staff to work with the students there directly. And then what results from that is, of course, as I said, we have employees on staff who are graduates of the program, but more importantly, the region and the state benefit because of all the graduates of this program. The MPA program has a capstone class. They were looking for a project for this semester. And the faculty reached out to Mr. Downs, and we were able to present some ideas to them. In turn, they liked a couple of those ideas, but asked us to present one, the St. Stephen's Church Road property, to the class as a potential project for them. So we had a number of our staff that got together. We had a virtual meeting with the class. It was a great question-answer session. They came out of that with a work program and presented that back to us. We agreed to that work program, and basically from there they took off. I will tell you that we did not, other than supplying them some information and some suggestions, the class really grabbed a hold of that and moved forward with it. I sent the draft report out to you a couple of weeks ago, and I told you when I sent it because it is just so comprehensive and impressive. So they're going to present that to you this evening. I will add one last thing, and that is that I hope it's been an educational process for them, but I know they've learned a lesson tonight, which is many of them work in addition to going to school or have other obligations, but they ask to go last. And I think they probably learned tonight never asked to go last at a meeting. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to the students.
All right, well, I want to start off. I'm Jim Douglas. I'm a professor in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration.
I supervised the class along with Doug Bean, who many of you know. We'd like to thank the county for this outstanding project. The capstone course is a really important component of our MPA program. Students get a chance to really go out into the real world and do some important work that lots of local governments and nonprofits in the area benefit from. Doug and I are so proud of this group of students. We both agree that this is the best group we have ever had in this course. And that's saying a lot because we've had some outstanding groups. But this group just outperformed everybody in terms of their level of teamwork, their innovation, their work ethic, resourcefulness, just an amazing group. So I saw Rodney Harris doing a bit of a presentation earlier. He's one of our star alums, really outstanding student. He was here. I can say this class is a bunch of Rodney Harrises. So you guys are hiring in the future. You can't go wrong with the folks in this class. So with that, now that I've built them up so much, I'll turn it over to our presentation team.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to see if I can take control here. Thanks, Professor Douglas and Mr. Marshall, for the kind words. We've certainly learned a lot over the last semester, and we learned another good lesson today. That's a good one. So yeah, hey everyone, thanks for listening in. We're really excited to share with you the research we've been doing. So my name is Will Prince, and I'll be presenting today along with my colleagues Laura Antonitis and Josiah Park. And many of you may be familiar with this program, or this project already, but I'll just provide a bit of a background before we get started. So Cabarrus County recently purchased a 616-acre parcel from the Conservation Fund through a 3-year lease agreement. And as shown on the map on the right, the features include an upland of house, which are there in blue, dry oak hickory forest, the active farm on the western side, and pine forests there kind of scattered throughout. And so the county plans to develop this this property into a passive park. So passive parks host things like walking and picnicking, and also emphasize conservation of the parkland. And like others mentioned before me, Cabarrus County commissioned us, the MPA team, to provide recommendations for that future park that promote kind of dual objectives of conservation and recreation. So our findings come from a few different channels, including a literature review. And so this is drawn from academic articles, government and nonprofit reports, and information from private businesses. We also interviewed 14 parks and conservation experts from around the Southeast and 14 local stakeholders that, in doing so, it really allowed us to present recommendations that are both substantively accurate, but also tailored to the local context. And the team conducted an informal site visit to really be able to envision the site's potential as a passive park. And so from this came 22 recommendations. And within each recommendation are multiple strategies for achieving these goals, examples of similar efforts, and key resources the county can use as a guide in the future. And so these recommendations are grouped into 7 themes. So those are conservation, nature-based recreation, education, facilities, amenities, the active farm, and then stakeholder involvement. And so these themes are going to be the roadmap for our report and as well as for the rest of this presentation. So the first theme I'll talk about is conservation. One really important feature to be conserved is the upland depression swamp. So this is a seasonal wetland, meaning it's filled with water during wetter months, but it'll dry out by late summer. It has an impermeable clay base, which holds rainwater, and this provides a breeding ground for amphibians and reptiles. And these swamps are also really rare, and they're only found in the Piedmont region of the southeastern U.S. Another feature is the dry oak hickory forest. So it's a common forest type of the southeast. It's dominated by white oak, post oak, chestnut oak, and shagbark hickory, along with some other shrubs and trees and various plants. So according to the NC Natural Heritage Program, the forest on the property is actually the best known example of this forest type in the county due to its size and good condition. So, and then together with the upland depression swamp, these two natural communities really contribute to the larger habitat on the property by providing critical habitat for amphibians and reptiles who migrate between the wetlands and the forest area on an annual basis. So I'll move on to our recommendations. We have 6 of them. And the first one is to avoid fragmentation of natural areas. So like the picture here, roads can fragment natural areas, disturbing migration cycles like the amphibians and reptiles that I mentioned. Crossing roads might be hit by cars, and further, invasive species thrive in disturbed areas along roads. So heavy construction on the site could lead to a problem with more aggressive plant species which lack natural competition. The next recommendation is to preserve the site's natural drainage. So disturbing the site's impermeable base could impact water retention, and large-scale grade changes and unnatural surfaces can divert water away from the swamps and cause erosion across the site. So our next recommendation is to apply forest management guidelines. Looks like our title may have gotten messed up there. But so generally plants and animals require a certain amount of shade, underbrush, and other features for proper habitat. So conducting prescribed ferns, monitoring for invasive species, and reclaiming the pine plantation on the property are just a few ways that this can be achieved, this ultimate goal. So the next recommendation is that that the county protect natural areas with conservation easement. One option is to establish the site as a dedicated nature preserve with the NC Natural Heritage Program. This is actually the highest form of protection in the state and will ensure that the property is protected for future generations. Again, that title's messed up, I apologize. Recommendation 5 is to establish and protect riparian zones. So riparian zones are waterways protected by trees and other greenery, which will filter water as it enters the waterway. It'll prevent stream bank erosion, and it will also regulate the temperature and oxygen levels of the water, leading to reduced pollution and enhanced biodiversity. And finally, we suggest that an updated plant and wildlife inventory is conducted on the site. So by inviting professional and volunteer groups to identify the flora and fauna on the property, the county will be able to really create an accurate land management plan for the site. And this also provides a great opportunity for the community to learn about the site and kind of become engaged in that development process. The next section is nature-based recreation. Still messed up titles there, but hopefully you can follow along. So nature-based recreation is simply outdoor activities in natural settings. So it's nature-based recreation is really perfect for a passive park, as the visitor experience depends on biodiversity and natural aesthetic beauty. So through nature-based recreation, we see a great opportunity here to blend those objectives of conservation and recreation that I was discussing. All right, so our first recommendation here is to provide recreation for all ages and abilities. So Gil Penalosa leads a nonprofit which advocates for equitable use of public space, and he believes that, quote, if everything we do in our public spaces is great for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old, then it will be great for people of all ages. And so we see this as a vision that will improve the experience of visitors at St. Stephen's Park. So by following ADA guidelines and providing open space and a variety of trail types and difficulties, visitors can sort of choose their own adventure, choose those activities that suit their abilities, as well as inspire them, kind of inspire their imaginations a little bit. So a variety of trails that support everything from strenuous hiking to casual walking will be important. Another recommendation is to practice sustainable trail development. So sustainable trails are built primarily with an understanding of drainage and runoff. So they should be built, for example, across slopes rather than straight up and down. So the trail in the picture there is severely eroded because it's built up that slope rather than across it. And so this happens because water is trapped on the trail, it travels quickly down the slope, bringing the soil with it. And so this will eventually create the sort of water chute that you see there in the picture. And so, and trails should also divert visitors around fragile areas to protect plants and animals from foot traffic. And so, sustainable trails in this way are better for the land, they're more functional, they're more aesthetically pleasing, and they ultimately require less maintenance. So our final recommendation for this area is to collaborate with volunteers and community partners. And so in doing so, would provide really an affordable source of expertise, and it's another great opportunity to engage the community, like I mentioned before. And potential partners may include the Carolina Thread Trail volunteers, Conservation Corps NC, and Central Carolina Cycling Club. All right, well, thanks so much, and now I'll pass it off to Josiah.
Educational initiatives and techniques as they are relevant to the St. Stephen's Park project. Just a moment. So at the local level, Cabarrus County has many programs supporting educational initiatives already, and our research noted that it's important to highlight some of the good work that's already being done. For example, the Soil Water Conservation District is hosting an event called Envirothon, a nationwide environmental competition, and provides trainings on topics like soil, aquatics, wildlife, and forestry. The Active Living in Parks offers a recreational component to outdoor education and has a curriculum designed for different grade levels, and is even offered in the last year opportunities online during the COVID-19 pandemic. Cabarrus County has also adopted and hosted other external partnerships with education, such as organizations like Muddy Sneakers, NC Science Festival, and City Nature Challenge. So, due to the diverse landscape and topography of the St. Stephen's property, there's a great opportunity here to continue to develop current educational programs on site. Examples of these include hosting a nature challenge, providing up-to-date science-based educational opportunities and programs, and even conducting some original research, be it routine. The fact that this is a biome of interest is worthy of further study. Our next recommendation is to install permanent educational experiences to teach and inspire when educational facilitators are not available. These include interpretive signage, which are self-guided educational opportunities throughout the environment and the wildlife of the area, and interpretive trails. Interpretive trails utilize the signage already mentioned, along with paths constructed through the upland depression swamp using signs and even brochures with scannable QR codes that can be used for a self-guided tour of the area for guests no matter what day or time they go to the park. These are duly beneficial, of course, because they also provide a way not only to teach, but to help keep and protect the natural habitat from foot traffic. Finally, the park has the opportunity to install an installation such as a pollinator garden, which is a collection of flowering plants in a concentrated area that facilitates an increase in the activity of pollinating species. Park planners may then utilize signs and brochures to explain the importance of pollinators, such as bees and butterflies, and why the entire ecosystem relies on plant propagation. This is beneficial because it serves as an educational experience and an active conservation initiative, and can also add to the overall aesthetic of the park. Now I'll discuss facilities specific to the St. Stephen's Park project. While not the most glamorous part of any work by any means, facilities have the potential to make or break a guest experience at the property. If the following aspects are not executed thoughtfully, guests are far less likely to return after their first visit. These, of course, involve parking lots, restrooms, and safety and security infrastructure, which we'll get to in brief in each. Our first recommendation is to develop parking areas that protect natural elements of the park. Parking lots, of course, allow people to leave their cars when they come to visit the property. The capacity thereof, however, is a big push or pull for park users, especially when there's a large event. Insufficient parking, as I'm sure you already know, often leads to visitor frustration and it affects their desire to return at a later date. Large parking lots produce large amounts of runoff as well and can create stormwater management problems. Developing parking areas that protect natural elements, specifically that prevent damage from runoff during heavy rain, require the following techniques. First is to use pervious pavement materials when constructing the parking area, and also the strategic use of vegetation around the parking areas in order to absorb runoff before it does any meaningful damage in the event of heavy rain. Next, we need to provide adequate and appropriate parking around the property. This will likely involve constructing multiple smaller parking facilities. This, of course, will have to be done after a study is done that will likely involve studying other Cabarrus County parks and their parking facilities. And all of this needs to be done in accordance to the Americans with Disabilities Act, so that sufficient parking is available for all guests, no matter their abilities or disabilities, so that they may visit the park. Our next recommendation involves considering the most appropriate restroom facilities on site. Conventional restrooms are of course the number one option. This is what park guests are most familiar with, what you likely have in your home. They have running water, flushing facilities, things of that nature. However, due to the topography of the St. Stephen's Park area, no current water or sewage infrastructure exists on site. This, of course, creates its own set of difficulties. Building a water or sewer system could be financially impractical or even in some cases impossible. Well, and septic systems also are extremely expensive depending on where they're installed. A second option is the use of what are called vault toilets. These are less expensive and can incorporate some flushing facilities, but they do need to be periodically pumped by a pumping truck, so access for heavy vehicles needs to be thought of when designing the overall road construction parking facilities. However, a combination of both is likely the solution here. Due to the park's size, they can be installed in different places, and the one that is best suited for each area can be installed in that area. Our next recommendation involves embodying the principles of crime prevention through environmental design. This is in order to convey a sense of community ownership, so crime is less feasible on the property. Common techniques for this are keeping amenities and facilities close to parking lots or access roads so they can be easily patrolled by law enforcement. To install a park gate to regulate traffic during park closures, as well as lights around parking facilities and amenities. To keep maintenance in mind when deciding what kind of plants to include with landscaping, so that they can be better kept. And then also to promptly address any worn out, broken, vandalized facilities and amenities. As soon as these become worn out, they become more likely to be vandalized because they don't seem to be that important to the community. Our next section involves amenities pertinent to the St. Stephen's project. For the purpose of this report, amenities are defined as improvements that contribute to the traditional use of parkland and include benches, playgrounds, picnic tables, shelters, and opportunities for fishing, hunting, disc golf, and other things like that. According to our research, passive parks require various amenities, the most important being shelters, sitting places, and shade, in order to increase patron enjoyment and attendance. The county should provide park shelters as an amenity at the property, including a proportionate number that are compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act standards. This is in order to assure reasonable accommodations to create similar experiences with disabled individuals as well as non-disabled individuals. To do this, park planners will need to evaluate the best locations for these shelters as well as the number of shelters needed. They may also want to review all building material options for park shelters with regards to expected capacity, structural expectations, sustainability, and ease of maintenance. If the shelters are also added to the county's online rental portal, citizens can also utilize shelters throughout the year for larger outdoor events, and the county will be aware of frequency of their usage and be better able to monitor for security and cleaning expectations. Sitting places are essential elements to the accessibility of the park. Park planners should consider high traffic areas and how many guests may be best served by seating options in these zones. Careful consideration should also be taken when evaluating best materials to use for the aesthetic of the park, the overall look of the park. These should also meet the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. Finally, park planners should consider how best to provide shade in open areas. We all, of course, are residents of North Carolina and know that 9 a.m. and 32 degrees and 3 p.m. and 85 degrees has happened before. So the summers especially have a good bit of heat, and in a large open area, the one thing we all really want sometimes is shade. So these shaded areas may make use of structures called shade sails in order to provide an open communal area with adequate protection from the sun's rays. These are intended to protect visitors from the most extreme heat as well as direct sunlight, and also provide a place for them to get away from these elements when traversing the park. These should be able to accommodate a large number of users, as well as in order to allow guests to feel comfortable at different elements of the park. An idea that we had during our research based on other parks is perhaps hosting a tree planting event in perhaps around the parking area in order to satisfy the vegetation recommendation involving parking. This will be an opportunity for the community to get involved, plant trees that might in a couple of years provide shade around these open areas. I'll now hand off to Laura, who will be discussing farming as well as other recommendations.
Laura, I think you're muted.
I was, thank you, Will. I appreciate that. So thank you, Josiah, for that handoff, and Will for letting me know that I was muted. As Will mentioned earlier, the property includes a 138-acre farm that runs along its western boundary. And in March of this year, the county finalized a contract with Barrier Farms. They're well qualified to uphold Cabarrus County's vision, given their farming experience and history in the community. The active farm represents an important opportunity for the county to promote the goals of land conservation and recreation. Along with conservation and recreation, education, community engagement, and economic development can be advanced through targeted initiatives on the farm. Through our research, we've developed 3 recommendations for this area of the land. The first recommendation is to set agricultural standards. This includes evidence-based conservation practices such as no-till farming, which Barrier Farms is well versed in. Other best practices include encouraging a diversity of crop species and limiting the use of artificial fertilizers. Finally, the Cabarrus County Soil and Water Conservation District Board plans to implement conservation controls and might also consider applying for a regenerative agriculture certification and/or a North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund grant. We also recommend coordinating educational opportunities at the farm. Experts frequently point to agricultural education as a valuable context for traditional subjects like environmental science, nutrition, mathematics, and technology. There may be opportunities to pursue educational initiatives by including well-established programs from the Soil and Water Conservation District Board and the Active Living and Parks Commission. Finally, community engagement opportunities at the farm include programs such as agritourism, farmers markets, and community-supported agriculture, or CSAs. Agritourism, which can range from outdoor activities to hospitality services, links active agriculture with tourism to provide education and entertainment to visitors. One of the most impactful benefits of agritourism is enhanced economic growth for agricultural communities. Agritourism also benefits the local community by providing increased economic activity, a broader tax base, and revitalizing rural economies. CSAs operate by individuals purchasing shares of the farm in advance of the growing season so that the farmer can focus on good land stewardship and growing high-quality food. During the season, members receive a certain amount of produce according to their level of contribution, and according to the USDA, farmers participating in CSA programs, receive advanced working capital, gain financial security, earn better crop prices, and benefit from the direct marketing plan. Farmers markets are spaces where farmers can come together to sell their products directly to consumers, and based on publications from the CDC, farmers markets are proven ways to promote public health by providing access to fresh produce and other healthy foods. They can also help low-income individuals, family, purchase healthy foods and serve as a collection point for food pantries. We want to acknowledge that many of these strategies may not be possible under the current lease, and if Barrier Farms has other interests or priorities at this time, the county could consider including these initiatives in a future RFP or even in other areas of the park. These initiatives may be of particular interest given the presentation from Ms. McSwain and the CFSA earlier this evening. Due to the numerous possibilities for and implications of certain amenities and land uses at the park, we recognize the need for stakeholder involvement to bolster the decision-making process. When stakeholders are involved at the local level, they feel more ownership of projects and policies, which generates higher commitment. Overall, engaging stakeholders in planning and execution often leads to better outcomes. And this leads us to our final recommendation, which is to explore various strategies for stakeholder involvement. Some groups to consider include property owners, residents, conservation organizations, elected officials, business owners, and special interest groups. And a few strategies which might be especially appropriate for the St. Stephen's Park include e-democracy, focus groups, participatory budgeting, and collaborative policymaking. E-democracy includes methods such as virtual town meetings, feedback polls, public surveys, and community forums. Based on our virtual setting this evening and the presentation from ETC earlier, it seems that the county has already taken advantage of many of these strategies. Focus groups are beneficial for discussing sensitive topics and can help researchers explore more rich, nuanced information than other methods like surveys. Participatory budgeting allows citizens to decide how to spend part of the public budget, giving them real power over real money. And participatory budgeting is often adopted by public entities as a regular part of the annual budget process. Finally, collaborative policymaking is grounded in the idea of bottom-up, community-driven policy implementation as opposed to top-down decision-making. The St. Stephen's Park project represents a tremendous opportunity for Cabarrus County residents to partake not only in outdoor recreation, but also in conservational and educational pursuits within their own community. While simultaneously protecting a fragile natural habitat, this undertaking may contribute to the well-being and happiness of those who visit through the features, amenities, and educational installations recommended in this report. We also want to take a moment to thank all of the Cabarrus County staff who helped us with this endeavor. This project would not have been possible without their time and assistance. And thank you all so much for your time this evening.
Well, thank you for that excellent presentation, Professor Douglas, Will, Josiah, Laura. You've given us a lot to work on, and it makes us feel, I certainly feel very excited about the prospects of the project coming up. You've instilled that in us. So we appreciate the effort, and we appreciate you being with us tonight, especially for 3.5 hours, which you probably did not anticipate. Did you have any other closing remarks, Professor Douglas? You're large on our screen, like as if you want to say something.
Oh, okay. Well, just if you have any questions, of course, the students are available for that. And if it's okay, I'd like the students just to introduce themselves real quick and just say what their career interests are.
I can go first. My name is Laura Antonitis. Currently working for a public policy consulting firm, but really love data analysis. That's where my true passion lies.
I'll go next. Again, I'm Will. I'm pursuing a PhD in the fall in public administration. Looking to get as much practical experience as I can. And this has been a really amazing project to work on. Like I said, we've learned so much and have had a great time. So thanks again for working with us.
You've already met me, but I'm Josiah Park. I am a UNCC fellow with Gaston County HR, so I'm getting a lot of practical local government experience there. Future plans are undecided, but I'm open to any and all job offers you have.
Thank you all very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for?
We have just a few more if we could.
Absolutely.
Introduce themselves.
Sure.
Well, I can go next. My name is Chelsea Helton. I currently work for the city of Charlotte. I'm a graduate intern in emergency management, and my future career interest lies in emergency management as well as anything to do with community engagement.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Horton, and I currently work at Crisis Assistance Ministry in Charlotte. I'm interested in pursuing a career in local government. After this project, perhaps in the Parks Department. I really found I enjoyed this project a lot.
Good evening.
Hi.
Oh, Maya, go ahead.
You can go ahead, Grant.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is.
Maya, go for it.
Okay, hi, my name is Maya White, and I currently work for a company called Crowley, and my interest lies in, they lie in HR and public administration and community engagement.
All right, well, I will go next after Maya. Good evening, everyone. My name is Grant McMillan. I am a 13-year resident of Cabarrus County, so it was a great personal joy of mine for me to work on this project since it will personally benefit me and my family in the upcoming years as this park is developed. And right now, I am a graduate teaching assistant for the Department of Political Science and Public Administration.
I am Matt Corbett. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Matt Corbett. I currently work in law enforcement in Charlotte. That's kind of where my passions lie right now, and I'm just really enjoyed working on this project and working for y'all.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Mead. I currently work for the city of Belmont, and I first found my love of government in the Peace Corps, sort of representing the U.S. abroad, and yeah, decided to pursue an MPA.
Hello, I'm Misha Edie Harbold. I'm the Artistic Operations Manager at Charlotte Ballet. So this has been quite an education for me this semester. Had a great time, and looking forward to finishing my Master's in Public Administration and working with community serving nonprofits.
All right, well, I think that's everybody. I don't think we missed anybody. We did shout out. But thank you to the students. Thank you to the county for all the great work you did. Thanks for Doug for helping me supervise, although supervising is kind of a stretch for this group. They more or less just took it and ran, and we just sat there and listened. So if you have any questions, they'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Hate to not ask one when they've been waiting for 3 hours, but we just appreciate all your hard work and effort. It gives us a lot to look at, and I'm sure we'll delegate it over to Mike, and we'll go from there. But no, this is fantastic. We're excited to have that piece of property and be able to help shape recreational opportunities for a long, long time in Cabarrus County.
I have no
Thank
questions.
you so much.
I have no questions, but I just wanted to say, beautiful presentation, very well done. Kudos to you guys for doing all this hard work, and we really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much, and for Cabarrus County, as you well know. And of course, you listened to our survey earlier where we talked about preservation of open space. So this really helps to justify the decision that we made to purchase this property. As you know, we are a rapid growing county, so we have lots of job opportunities available. So keep us in mind, Josiah, when you get ready. We're ready to talk to you. So, thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, I again, Doug, thank you, and Professor Douglas, thank you very much for considering our project. We're excited. You exceeded expectations. Thank you to all the students. Again, you guys have done a tremendous amount of work. So this is valuable information for us as we proceed into our next steps of actually making this park become a reality. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. Okay.
Thank you all. And so that concludes our agenda. And we move now to the approval of our regular meeting agenda. You all have copies of that before you. I'm not aware of any actions that we've taken tonight that would cause any changes unless there is something that you see there that you desire to change. And it does include our scheduled public hearing that we talked about earlier. Do I hear a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda and schedule the needed public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. We do have need of a closed session tonight. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss matters related to pending litigation, economic development, and acquisition of real property as authorized by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A, 3, 4, and 5.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And we are now in closed session, and we thank the television audience for joining us tonight. See you in 2 weeks at our regular meeting. Good night.